Welcome to the Modesto City Schools regular Board of Education meeting. It is the 1,415th meeting, regular board meeting, and this meeting is now called to order. And Superintendent Renquist, would you like to make an announcement about interpreter services? Woo! Perhaps. Woo! Is everybody okay? That sounded like a shock.
Was that? I think it's just too high. I think the volume.
What number is it? Oh.
I'll go tell Jim.
That's okay.
Test. Test. There we go. Maria Lobato is here, and she's got an announcement to make before we get started.
Muy buenas tardes a todos, bienvenidos. Estamos ofreciendo servicio de intérprete para si gustan y necesitan, pueden pasar aquí al frente por uno de estos dispositivos. Gracias.
We just want to make sure everyone is awake.
Thank you. Sorry about those technical difficulties. In closed session, the board gave direction to legal counsel, and the board voted in closed session 6-0 to appoint Mark Herbst as the interim superintendent from the dates of June 27th, 2018 to June 30th, 2018. We have a number of days that aren't covered. So that is a closed session. The board, if we could please stand and join me for a moment of silence, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance.
Do a moment of silence first. Moment of silence. Do a moment of silence.
All right, please join me in the flag salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. All right. So at this time, I'd like to read the comment about public comment. I want to call your attention to the fact that if you wish to address the board during the period for public comment on a subject not on agenda, you must complete a public presentation request card and submit it to the board president prior to the period for public comment. Only those who have submitted cards will be called upon to speak, and no cards will be accepted after the period for public presentation has begun. Every person who wishes to address the board must fill out a card. You'll find the cards in the lobby. The period for public comment is limited to 30 minutes. Time will be allotted equally to individuals based on the number of request cards submitted. The maximum for any one speaker is 3 minutes. I also want to remind you that if you wish to make a complaint against a specific district employee, you should follow the district's personnel complaint procedure. Copies of that procedure are also available in the lobby, as are agenda copies, which outline the procedures we will observe during the period for public comment. The right to address the board does not exempt the speaker from any potential liability for defamation. The law limits the response of board members and prohibits the board from taking any formal action during public comment. Let's see, I have 5 cards. So if there's any others. And then for an announcement, this is the last meeting for our interim superintendent, Craig Renquist, and so the board would like to acknowledge the great work that you've done, and this is the last meeting before your retirement. We're well-deserved retirement after 34 years in the district. So we want to just join you and thank you for your years of service, and thank you for being such a great employee. Thank you again. Thank you. All right, is there anyone? Oh yes, Trustee Marks.
I just want to thank you as well. I had a chance to thank you recently, but I just want to thank you for your time and dedication and just what a loyal, great employee you've been. I watched you move from elementary, or Mark Twain. I remember you were principal at Mark Twain and then principal at Barrera, and then into the district office, and seeing you do many reports and then move into this position, and so you just rise to every occasion that you've had to take over. So I just want to acknowledge your time and effort, and I just pray that when you step out of this position into whatever life holds for you, I just pray that you have a really enjoyable time with your family, spending time with them, and being able to do all the things that you weren't able to do because you were taking on so many responsibilities here. So thank you for the responsibility that you did and just how well you've served us and the community. So I just want to thank you.
Thank you. All right. This takes us into the approval of the consent agenda. Do I hear any other questions or comments from the board? Seeing none, we'll go to the audience for any questions or comments regarding the consent agenda. Seeing none, we'll come back to the board for a vote. Is there a motion?
So moved.
I'll second.
All right, it's been moved by Trustee Walker and seconded by Trustee Brown. All right, all those in favor of the consent agenda, say aye. And raise your
Aye.
hand. Aye. Then the agenda passes unanimously. All right, the approval of order of discussion action items. Item B5, which was a request to do a presentation to the board, has been moved pursuant to the requester's request to the July meeting. So that item will not be heard tonight, but otherwise the order of discussion action items remains the same. So is there a motion? Are there any questions from the board or comments? All right, are there any questions or comments from the public? Seeing none, we'll come back to the board for a motion.
I move approval of the discussion action items.
All right, it's been moved by Trustee Marks and seconded by Trustee West. All those in favor of the approval of the order of the discussion action items, say aye. Aye. The motion passes unanimously. This takes us to the period for public presentations, and each speaker will have 3 minutes. So the first speaker is Lindsay Bird. Good evening. Is the microphone on? No.
There we go.
Good. Okay.
Thank you for the opportunity to address some concerns Language Institute staff, advocates, students, and families have as a result of using our collective voice by engaging in public school board meetings over the past few months. Since we were not provided the courtesy of giving input or insight on policies that impact our students prior to them being discussed in a public fashion, we were truly left no choice but to engage in this venue, other than remain silent altogether. What recent events have taught us on a local and national level is now is not the time to remain silent, especially for our most vulnerable students and fellow Americans. Since exercising our voice in a public manner, it is now apparent, based on comments at previous meetings and some social media posts made by a trustee, that our funding is under attack. Let me be clear, we appreciate every penny the Language Institute has ever received. I hope you all trust that the results our program celebrates, such as students' reading levels going from preschool to grade level at record speed, statewide recognitions such as the Gold Ribbon and Golden Bell Awards, or that approximately 90% of our graduates enter higher education, are all proof that our public funds are being well spent. To question this investment just because we advocate for policies that are in the best interests of our students and our community is nothing short of punishing us for exercising our civil rights. At the June 5th meeting, our funding was questioned due to a need for MCS to better invest and support English learners at the primary elementary grades. I would like to suggest that we should not be competing with ELs of any age for funding. The elimination of categorical funds means the district can prioritize both elementary ELs and newcomers at the Language Institute simultaneously. In fact, elementary and LA teachers are alike in taking English learners from mastery of the Roman alphabet to reading at grade level, in addition to meeting the unique cultural needs of these newcomers. I believe rather than pitting us against one another, we should explore ways to better communicate and collaborate. The LI staff have a lifelong learner philosophy, which means we are always open to ways to be more efficient with funding, to help all English learners in our district succeed, and to continue to shine a light on barriers either in policy or politics, that stand in our collective way to better serve all English learners in Modesto City schools. The only reason we mentioned the refugee grants MCS passed on applying for, the decline of over $50,000 in HMH curriculum upgrades, and reminded the trustees that our students do get ADA past the age of 18, including concentration grant funding, was to illustrate the political roadblocks we have faced over the years. If anything the adults or students have said has made us sound ungrateful, please take my word that was not our intention. I will email you the rest of my comments and the social media posts I referred to after the meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Dr. Herrera? Good evening.
Good evening. Actually, I'm put this here. So basically, well, actually, good evening. Hello. Happy summer. I stand in front of you guys today, I guess, because I'm a bit concerned about the types of public statements being said among our community, both in the social media sphere and in the reality sphere. My concern is based off of the comments of one particular board member trustee. Within the context of his comments, this board member equates having family members of ethnically diverse and academically diverse backgrounds to being woke, or in other words, culturally competent. Though having a diverse family background is wonderful and enhances one's life, right, it doesn't automatically give a person credibility or insight into the experiences and or possible struggles of populations demographically different than their own. How one lives their life through the lenses of their family members and how one takes steps based off of lived experiences with these people is how one gets or loses credibility. Though people's families help to define who they are, it is only that person who gets to use those influences to best mold and define themselves. It is thus dangerous for school board members in particular to believe that one's diverse family background gains them respect or even real insight into the needs of diverse communities or populations. If this is a perception built within one's mind, they can very well believe they are making great decisions for the good of diverse populations and all students, but in fact they are not. In education, actions do speak louder than words, and in this case, the words and actions are not matching up. I thank you for your time. And I also will be emailing you some of the statements that I'm referencing as well as my letter. Thanks.
Thank you. All right. Ruth Lumen? Good evening.
Good evening. Thanks for your time. My name is Ruth Lumen, and I'm from MJC, and I'm here tonight to acknowledge the effort of students, parents, teachers, community members, and district leadership, and their time spent on issues related to the education of newcomers. Over the past few months, even years, various stakeholders have set aside valuable time to both listen and communicate perspectives. Students in particular have shown a great deal of courage in voicing their concerns in a language and setting in which they are neither comfortable nor familiar. This kind of civic participation should be praised. With that said, it is concerning that advocacy for the LI has recently been mischaracterized as screaming, yelling, and drama. Such references diminish the significance of the issues brought forward and the impact of board policy decisions on the lives of individuals who desire to get an education that will empower them and the community as a whole. Such advocacy is not drama. It is civic engagement, one of our most basic rights and hallowed values as citizens in a culture of democracy. It is therefore incumbent upon leadership to listen bravely, not always comfortably, but bravely, and indeed value and respect the very real concerns and perspectives of those in the trenches and on the front lines of educating some of our hardest working and most vulnerable students. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Debbie Barrera? Good evening.
Good evening. My name is Debbie Barrera, and I am with We Are La Raza Parents Union. We are a social justice movement. And if you want drama, Mr. John Walker, we can bring it, because I am offended by the fact that if you want screaming and yelling, we can do that too. But I thought we got past all that in federal courts where we're supposed to be bridging and mending for these children. Thank you for giving me your undivided attention, sir, because I stand as one, but I represent many. And I have said that for the last 7 years. And for your 3 days, thank you, because they're not nameless and faceless anymore, Mr. Herb. So hopefully we can pull this district together before the new one gets here. I want to quote, bullshit, no mas, and I will literally take the mic. Wow. In this statement, Mr. John Walker, I counted 17 I's in what you said. That was offensive because we have a governing board, and community is trying very hard not to hit the streets because Ted and I work well when it comes to trying to re-bridge. When we were sitting at the elections, we were trying to do it to make it even so that Mrs. West and Mr. Lopez can have a fair say in what others say on this governing board. Mr. Steve Grumble said that he didn't like our kind. He said it, but you announced it on social media by the way you wrote all of this. And we demand an apology because we are not here to scream. We are not here to yell. And if you guys didn't hear our voices when we were voicing when Andy died in the principal's arms and you've got them now promoted in the back, how can we not yell to that? This is our children's money, not yours, John. Our children from all borders, especially the ones that are in Mexico right now that are be coming in here. How are they going to be treated? We were going so well until one pulled another stunt. Shame on you, Mr. John Walker.
Thank you. Angela Zioli. Good evening.
Evening. Angela Zioli from the MCS Managers Board. I am here to acknowledge and thank our interim superintendent, Craig Renquist, for his 34 years of service to this district, Modesto City Schools. His loyalty and dedication to the students, parents, staff, and community members did not go unnoticed. Mr. Renquist, has epitomized professionalism throughout his career. He's been a shining example of what a difference one person can make in our community. On a personal level, I had the privilege of working as his administrative assistant in human resources. So I learned firsthand his integrity, his thoughtfulness, and his caring nature. So I just wanted to take a moment to tell you that you will be missed, and we wish you the best in your retirement. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, thank you. Thank you to everyone who came tonight and adhered to our protocols for speaking to the board. I appreciate every one of you. Then this takes us on to, well, we don't have our student representative since it's the middle of summer. So Modesto Teachers Association, is there a report tonight? No, all right, thank you, Mr. Herrera. And then the California School Employees Association, Mr. Courette.
Yes.
Welcome to the podium.
Good evening. My name is Don Courette. I represent CSEA as Chief Negotiator here tonight. Good evening, Board President Amy Newman and Cabinet and Trustees. Craig is outgoing interim superintendent, and I just wanted to say a few words of appreciation for the work CSEA has done with him and personally that I've done with him. It's been probably 8 or 9 years that we've been working pretty closely together over the years through different capacities. And I made some careful notes on the way over here at all the red lights. So I put a lot of thought into this. But it all comes from the heart. And a few of these words are what I think of when I think of Mr. Renquist. Integrity is right up there on the top. Honorable. dedicated. You could look up dedicated in a dictionary and probably see a picture of him. 34 years for one employer, that's not too many people could say that. I'm a respectability, absolutely, in there. I'm a Dallas Cowboy fan, and he kind of reminds me of a couple of our past coaches. No offense to the 49er fans in the room, but he's got hair like Jimmy Johnson. It never seems to be messed up. And he dresses kind of like Tom Landry without the hat. So that's pretty cool. Greg, it's been fun working with you over the years. Got a lot of respect for you. Good luck in all your future endeavors, and I'd like to shake your hand one more time. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. All right. Thank you. This takes us on to item B4, which is a request to address the board by Lieutenant Steve Stanfield, who's also an area commander. Good evening, Lieutenant.
Good evening. Good evening. Thanks for having us back. With me is Officer Randy Engel. He's one of my staff members that helped me with the programs. And so I wanted to readdress the board one more time and say thank you for allowing me back to speak to you again about the relationships the Modesto Police Department is making with your students in this district. At the start of this school year, I came here and I spoke to you all about our vision with regards to how do we as a police department work better with your youth now that the school officers were no longer available. We promised to help build relationships with students and work toward a common goal of supporting and mentoring. For those of you who are only hearing this for the first time, I want to quickly recap our last meeting. I feel this is important because after my last visit to this board, I had people ask me if I was truly doing this. Is he just saying he's doing this, and will he live up to his expectations of what he said he would do? So I guess I should first go over what we said we were going to do. Modesto Police Department set goals for 2017-2018, and we identified and implemented youth outreach opportunities and increased our youth participation. We identified several ways we could improve, and I want to hit the highlights of those programs. The first was set up by Officer Randy Engel, who's with me tonight. He developed a Save Me a Seat program. The idea is to ask officers to take a lunch break on campuses and have lunch with the kids. They stick around, they play games, they interact on a personal level with the students and staff by talking and just playing games with the kids. This was our way for your youth to get to know the officers for more than just the uniforms they wear, but to actually play with them and build relationships with students. The second program was a running club program at James Marshall. About every week, Detective Shawn Dodge can be found at James Marshall School running with the Milers. It's a running club on campus. Shawn takes time to get to know the children. They use running as a way to bridge the gap between us and them, and they just have fun. The students have learned that Shawn is there for them. They can lean on him for advice, mentorship, all the while improving their physical fitness. The third program that we have taken part in is the Black Student Unions at several Modesto City high schools. Sergeant Tyler and Sergeant Payne managed this program, and they met with BSU kids at Bayer, Davis, Johansson, and other high schools. Sergeant Tyler and Sergeant Payne took this endeavor to heart, and they mentored students and helped them break down what we believe to be some lack of communication that was present with some of our BSU students. The students got to know officers as people, and we could have open dialogue to understand each other's points of view. As we continue to build these relationships, we can start to mentor what we believe to be the leaders of tomorrow. This year, the BSU and MPD group participated and ran a candy cane walk, similar to a cakewalk, for a free Christmas event designed for elementary-age kids. I was there, and I watched as BSU students and MPD officers handed out candy canes, took pictures, and had fun building relationships. This year, we also held our second annual BSU Students versus MPD basketball game at Bayer High School. The last program we participated in is the Beyond the Walls program. This program is actually done outside of Modesto City schools, but the focus is to have officers meet with elementary-age students whose parents are incarcerated. We talk to the kids about who we are as people, and we mend relationships that are often torn due to the actions of their parent. We educate the children on the fact that their parents are good people who love them very much, but they have made a bad decision and bad choices have consequences. Earlier this last school year, I stood here and I thanked you all for allowing us to be a part of making this community better through these youth outreach opportunities. And we promised you that we would work hard to prove through actions, not just words, that we were going to fulfill our commitment. I'm here to say that as of April of 2018, we had visited your school campuses over 150 times. These students included Save a Seat lunches, BSU visits, running events, career days, lectures, walk to school, and many more. We spoke to students at Beyond the Walls for after-school programs over 7 times. We accompanied students on a field trip to Stan State University, and we were able to donate 2 bicycles to students who were struggling to get to school on time because they had to walk. This is all in an effort to be part of helping and mentor the youth of this community. Also not on my list was a program that we spoke about earlier, but something I still wanted to mention. Through partnerships with this district, we held a Police Youth Summit at the Stanislaus County Regional Training Center, our police academy. We hosted 116 high school age students who had an opportunity to experience what it's like to work in law enforcement. We walked them through real life police scenarios. We had a lecture from an officer who was a graduate of this district, and we provided them lunch. So what's next? Some of you know me. You know I'm not one who thinks that status quo is okay. And we at the police department feel that we should always be striving to do better. Clearly, our focus this last year has been on the children that attend the campuses, and I agree that's important. But there are others on that campus that need our love and support. This last year has been tragic with school shootings in Florida and Texas, and we know that parents and staff in this district feel that tension each day due to the horrible actions of some. We want you to know that we understand and we will always be there to support and protect our schools. I'm here to tell you that we will continue to commit our staff to all the programs we participated in this last year, and we're always looking for more. Recently, Detective Dodge has begun the process of applying for a federal grant, which we hope will fund uniforms and travel for a running club. The idea is to not incur any cost on this district, but to show you that we want to partner with our schools and focus on what's important, our youth. There's one group that I did miss, and that's kind of why I'm here today. Well, we all agree that the most precious commodity in our schools is the students. We have forgotten the heroes of our district, the staff. Teachers and school staff, you deserve our love and respect for all you do for our children. As I said before, some of you have no idea who I am and what I spoke about last time, so I'm going to give you a little bit of who I am. I'm a third-generation graduate of Modesto High School. I'm the father of 2 Modesto City Schools graduates. I'm best friends to several school teachers in this district and others. I'm the husband of a Modesto City Schools employee and the son-in-law of a Modesto City Schools teacher. I am someone who is mentored by teachers in this district, and I'm the man I am today in part because of them. Teachers and school staff, you deserve to know how much you mean to this community and how truly valuable you are. Earlier this month, I was informed that 2 teachers of mine from the 90s were going to retire this year, and on Thursday, the 31st of May, they would be leaving Modesto High School for the last time. Patrick Durr, if you're here, please come forward. Over 25 years ago, you took me under your wing and you kept me on a straight path in a time when I could easily have gone astray. You allowed me to be your teacher's assistant. You would talk to me about English, life, and how to behave. You never judged me when I was bad, but you gave me direction, teaching me compassion and caring. I followed you and I looked up to you as a mentor, and all these years later, I hope that I've made you proud. Because of you, I will never forget how to spell the word public. There's a story here. He asked me to proofread a speech. You're all educators. You can figure out what word letter he left out. But public was what he was trying to say. And we managed that just fine. Mr. Durr, I will never forget you and the impact you made on my life and many other students' lives. I would also like to invite Ron Vincent forward. Mr. Vincent, you were my science teacher, and I'm here to tell you that you kicked me out of my class for a week. Was I angry? Yeah. Did I deserve it? Yeah. When I went back to your class, sir, you punished me. You never judged me anymore. You didn't treat me any different. You reached out to me and brought me closer to you. This is a lesson that I have taken into my life as a father, husband, and as a police officer. I can hold people accountable without holding a grudge or treating anyone differently. You thought you were teaching me science, but you were teaching me how to be a man, and I thank you. Gentlemen, I want you to know how often I want you both to know how often I thought of you, and I kept in touch. I did not keep in touch with you, but I wanted you to know what I did with myself after school. I went on to further my education. I received a master's degree in criminal justice management from the American Military Academy. I served this community for over 20 years, and I'm a division commander of the finest police agency in the nation. I am a part-time college professor, a husband, and a father, all because of you. Are any of my fellow classmates here from Modesto High?
Oh, that's awesome.
I've asked them to be here because I want you guys to see that out of our class, there's lawyers, doctors, nurses, principals, dispatch supervisors, police officers, who's back in the foyer. Yeah, Dave, I didn't forget you. And teachers, just to name a few. Gentlemen, this is your legacy. This is your reward for all your years of teaching. Each one of us is grateful to you for making us the men and women we are today. And as a tradition in law enforcement, I would like to present you both with a challenge coin to always remember how much of an impact you made on us. Well done, and thank you both. And please know that you have touched each one of us, and you will never be forgotten. It was kind of odd. Mr. Vincent actually exchanged phone numbers with me. But that's okay. It's okay now. It's okay now, right? Teachers and staff of Modesto City Schools, we need you to know that we at the police department look to you as our heroes. We give you our children each day, and we trust you with them, and from our group, that says a lot. We understand that you are often labeled by the actions of one bad individual. We know that you are held to a higher standard both on and off duty. We know that you did not get into this job for money or for praise, but you show up every day because you care about our youth. Teachers and staff, you do not hear it enough from our community, but we thank you and we love you for what you do. No matter how much money is provided in any budget, trust me, I know, you'll never be paid enough. You'll never be paid what you are worth, and you will never be rich doing this job because it is a calling. But there are other rewards besides money in this world and the next. Always remember, you are called to serve, and we thank you. So now we get to this part of my speech where I ask, what's next? Am I here? I'm not here asking this board to do anything other than to continue to open your arms to us as a partner. This year, I would like to see our students, our staff visit over 200 campuses. I'd like to continue to build relationships with teachers and staff. So I think what can we do? How can we be better? I've thought about this a lot, and here's my answer. I don't know. But that doesn't mean I won't try. We mentioned love several times in this speech, and I'm asked, how do you show love? Well, a wise man once told me that love with an agenda is not love, it's just a program. So for now, I will just say we will continue to love the youth and staff of this district, and we will continue to look for opportunities to build relationships and work collectively to make this community better for everyone. There's one last thing I need to address before we leave. Craig, you're a dear friend of mine. I will miss you greatly. Craig and I have been friends for 20 years. We've seen our children raised together. We've worked together. We've been to meetings together. Craig, you're a great man. This district is losing a valuable asset the day you walk out that door. I have one more challenge coin to present to you, and I want to say thank you.
Thank you.
I'll stay up here if anybody has any questions.
All right. Thank you, Lieutenant Stanfield. We should invite you to every meeting. That was such a wonderful presentation. I think Trustee Brown had a comment or question.
No question, but just a huge thank you. When we look at other communities that have suffered, to see this bond with our students and law enforcement, what a tremendous asset that is in our community. And thank you, thank you, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. It's our privilege.
So appreciate the fact that our children can grow up learning that police officers are their friends and their allies.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Are there any comments, any more comments from the board? Or then questions from the audience? Or comments? Yes. Reverend Crosby.
So I will make this short and sweet here. I do want to say that
Again, there's a hallmark here that reconciliation cannot take place where vital relationships have not been built. So I want to commend you, Lieutenant, for the work that you've done. Lieutenant Stanfield is also our K through 12 officer for the Modesto Police Clergy Council, which now includes the Modesto City School Board, Fire Department, Probation, Parole, Sheriff's Department, and Highway Patrol, as well as District Attorney's Office and the Mayor's Office. So we thank God for this man. And the last thing I want to say is something he did not mention, but you would get it exude through what he demonstrated here, and that is he is also a believer in the fact that those things that we look at as swinging lanterns of eternity, and we call them stars, there is a purpose that lies behind those swinging lanterns, and it is a purpose that embraces the whole of mankind, and that's a God concerned about his children. Thank you, my brother.
Thank you. Ms. Barrera?
On behalf of We Are La Raza Parents Union, I want to thank you on a personal level, because when you spoke over at Pastor Reverend Anderson's church and you gave all of what you do here in this community, I went to the other communities and I bragged about you. And I said, we have to do what Officer Steve is doing over with the Modesto City School District. And I just want to thank you, because I speak to parents. I have Victory Outreach in the audience this evening, and we're on board. We want to help better serve too. And I just want to thank you and your team and Glenn and Chief and everybody that's paying attention to the most precious, which are our future, our children, parents' children. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Williams, good evening.
Good evening. I just want to thank Steve. I had the pleasure of working with Steve's mother-in-law, who was just an outstanding teacher, and I met Steve through my nephew that I was raising. And I want you to know, Steve, that sometimes you don't realize what an impact you make on a young man who was having some real difficult times. And thanks to Officer Steve, when he was a beat officer, he was one of those people who came and lent a helping hand that made a difference in my nephew, who's a successful young man today. And I want to thank you for that. And he never forgot. He even remembered when he saw me again where we knew each other from. So thank you and congratulations. And if the NAACP can be of any support and help in what you're doing, we're there for you too. Thank you.
Great. Good evening.
Good evening. I'm Amanda Soria. I like to say you have touched a lot of people. I don't know if you're familiar with Leticia Lopez. That's my cousin. And she made a speech. She got pregnant young, and she made a speech to people who graduated. And as you know, she came back to be a police officer, and it was because of you guys. And I just wanted to let you know that she told everybody that, people can change. And it was free if it wasn't for you guys. So I just wanted to thank you guys.
Thank you. All right, come up to the podium. We'd like to hear what you have to say. Oh, come up to the podium. We want to be able to, everybody to hear you.
For a long time, for over 20-something years, I've been on the other side of the law. But here it is, I'm beginning to see the light, and the light's clear.
Good.
So I walk in here, and I hear a lot of stuff. But what I see is what I'm drawn to. So I'm here just to volunteer my time. I just quit my job because here maybe 4 years ago, he's back there, Keanu, and he got dropped in my lap. And I really didn't know, all I seen was my family, but there's a bigger picture behind him. And because of this, I'm here today, and I see the light. And I know I'm called for a bigger purpose than just going back and forth to prison. I enjoy working with kids. and part of Victory Rangers and the outreach, you know, working with youth, boys, and all that. So I just want to volunteer my time, man. If there's something that I can do, you know what I mean, just being there and give a testimony, a help, or whatever it may be, you can call on me. And, you know, Sister Debbie, I mean, we go way back, and she can tell you about the lifestyle. Because I'm not into, you know, like a braggamoon and tell everybody where I come from, you know, but I've been on the other side. And I enjoy the light on this side. And I really enjoy what you did. Because if it wasn't for you guys, I wouldn't be where I'm at. You understand? And because you were my enemy, but I was the worst one. You see that? I found out that I was the enemy, not you guys. So keep doing what you're doing. I'm here to help you.
All right. Thank
And
you.
Just to be clear, none of this I do. The staff at Modesto Police Department does this. I just say yes.
Oh, you're too modest. All right, all right, anyone else? Thank you for coming tonight. Thank you to Mr. Vincent and Mr. Durr. Enjoy your retirement. And thank you, Lieutenant Stanfield, for coming tonight and sharing that wonderful report of all the things Modesto PD is doing and being such a great partner to us. We appreciate you and look forward to a continued relationship. Anything else? All right, then we'll move on to the next item, which again, B5 is moved to July. So we're on to B6, which is report on the financial evaluation of energy conservation and solar generation project with Johnson Controls, Inc.
And Associate Superintendent Zerley will make the introduction and also address the public hearing issue.
Yes, good evening, and thank you, President Newman. In order to comply with both our deadlines for the agenda and also deadlines regarding agenda items, we inadvertently posted this as a public hearing. And so because it's just a report, there is not a public hearing required. So if anybody's here as a result of the public hearing, that will be delayed until a subsequent board meeting. And so at the last board meeting on June 4th, the board heard a proposal from Johnson Controls that would expand on the initial scope of work and provide further comprehensive energy projects and savings to the district. While the district recognizes it does have the potential to achieve long-term cost savings, the project would require financing through the issuance of non-voter approved debt. And so when we decide to bring the contract forward to the board for approval, there would be a required public hearing at that time. Right now we have Jeff Small, the district's financial advisor, managing partner with Capital Public Finance Group, here to give a report, a financing analysis of the project and what that would mean to our issuance of non-voter approved debt. So, Jeff?
Well, thank you very much, President Newman, Superintendent Renquist, members of the board. Very happy to be here tonight. As Tim said, Mr. Zerley, I am the district's financial advisor, and what that means is we have a fiduciary relationship to put your interests above our own. So I want to talk to you tonight a little bit about the economics of the proposal delivered from Johnson Controls. And they're also here tonight, as is a team of people who have been working on this project. Underwriters are here, and legal counsel as well. But the goals of this project were really twofold. One, create energy conservation through converting district facilities to LED lighting, and also create clean renewable energy through solar and battery technology. So the district has done some Prop 39 lighting conversions, and one of the objectives here is to take the savings generated from the lighting conversion to LED and to use it to acquire and produce clean renewable energy. We'd also like to take that solar energy and marry that with battery storage so that there isn't any electrical interruption, and actually have a more efficient use of solar energy. Finally, the LED lights, as you know, will reduce overall energy demand, and as you will see tonight, we're trying to keep this lighting and solar project budget neutral, and also to create savings and some eligibility for state funds in order for those savings to be, further improve the schools. So as I said, basically there's $8.5 million of LED lighting that's being proposed. There's about $12.7 million of solar projects at Enix High, Johansson, and Bear High schools. The solar will be situated in parking lots. As you can see, the total project cost is about $24.5 million, approximately $8.5 on lighting, $12.7 on solar. There's a project contingency of $1 million. That contingency is controlled by the district and can be used as the district sees fit, and there's about $2.3 million in soft costs. As far as the savings go, there's about $1.36 million in savings. Approximately $415,000 is from solar. The rest is from the Prop 39 and Phase 2 lighting projects, and just savings from, the longer life of LED lights of about $70,000. So the other key assumptions to know is that solar panels do degrade over time. So there has been a reduction of that solar production of 0.5%. Solar costs, as electrical energy would, over time, it would be expected to increase by about 3.5%. In order to get funds to put the project in place, a borrowing, would be required. The interest rate on that is approximately 4%. And JCI has agreed to guarantee the project 95% of the project savings. In addition, there are also other incentives through MID and Modesto Irrigation District and Turlock Irrigation District. That's about $158,000. Plus, for battery storage, there's the self-generation incentive program, about $720,000. In addition, there is also potentially state funding of about $15 million. And we were expecting that state funding to be available to the district in 2029. It is very important to note that when we did look at the financial evaluation, we excluded state funding from the analysis so that the project would be budget neutral without actually receiving state funding. We did talk about, in order to implement $24.5 million worth of projects, lease revenue bonds would be required. The lease revenue bonds would deliver money, it's basically a loan, to install the project, and then that would be repaid over time, anywhere from 21 to 25 years. I'll talk about that in a minute. But really, the repayment of that loan would simply be taking money budgeted for utility expenses. Instead of paying those utility expenses, they'd be used to pay debt service on the lease revenue bonds. Again, with the objective of being budget neutral every year, and hopefully with additional savings, which I'll talk about in a minute. So when we look at the terms of the financing, I mean, this is preliminary, but it would the financing would be repaid anywhere from 21 to 25 years, depending on the amount of desired savings. So savings could range anywhere from $10,000 a year to $85,000 a year. Obviously, depending on the term of the financing. From my perspective as your advisor, I'd rather see more savings annually in case, if energy doesn't escalate as much as is projected, or what have you. We just want to see the district in a positive cash flow situation. If in 10 years the district does receive the state funding that I talked about, then the loan, up to, can be paid down with the amount of state funds that would be received. So what you see here is a graph, and what this graph shows is it shows all of the revenue sources that we talked about. The green are the incentives. The yellow is solar savings from energy produced by the solar panels. The blue, which is the lion's share of the savings, is simply converting your lights into LED lights, which are far more cost effective. And the red bars, I mean, that's your debt service, and then on top of your debt service, you do have some expenses. Now, there should be at least $50,000 a year in savings. And in fact, when we looked at the last batch of numbers, it was actually closer to $85,000 of savings. When the numbers actually behind this graph, the expenses are about 42.5 million. The revenues are about 40.2. So there's about $2.2 million worth of savings over the 25 years. And when we talk about a budget neutral project, that's exactly the type of thing that we're looking for. Again, this does not include any state funding. So as far as steps forward that we'd be looking at, tonight this is just some preliminary information so you can get a feel for what this project means in terms of the district's financial picture. If you wish to continue this project, there's a couple of important steps, including filing some paperwork with the County Office of Education and county stating our intention of proceeding with this project. There would be a first reading of a debt policy that would permit the actual issuance of these lease revenue bonds on July 23rd. And I would return to you for an actual public hearing on the contract with JCI on August 13th. Between now and August 13th, administration will be negotiating with JCI over the actual projects, and we will continue to monitor that negotiation to make sure that the district's objectives of project neutral with additional savings are actually achieved, or else we wouldn't come forward with the item to you. But that being said, the actual date that the interest rate on the borrowing that would be set would be September 5th, with actually money available to begin the project on September 26th. As part of the public hearing, one of the findings that will need to be made is that the overall project savings will exceed the project costs. And again, that's without state funding, and that would be the case that would be made to you on August 13th. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you. Are there any questions? Yes, Trustee Brown has a question for you.
So you indicated that the payback period for the loan would be somewhere between 21 and 25 years. What happens if there is a substantial replacement of some of the equipment that's necessary in that time frame? How will we handle those costs if they exceed excess revenues?
Sure. So one of the key drivers that we talked about was the lighting. And so as I understand it, there's the lights will have like 50,000 hours of lights, or 2,500 hours per year. I think it is always the case that with any type of equipment, whether it's a school building or an HVAC unit, it will always degrade and need to be replaced. And I think it is very important that money be set aside for future replacements of these lights. The lights are going to be paid off over 20 years rather than 25 years, which definitely helps the district in terms of having to avoid early replacement. The solar panels have a warranty of 25 years, and we would expect the life of the solar project to be between 25 and 30 years. But to your point, if equipment needs to be replaced, it does come at a cost, and that's a cost that it would be borne by the district.
Are there any other questions? Trustee Walker.
And so looking at the calendar, because that was what I was most interested in, is when things would sort of start moving in motion. So theoretically, if we get through all this and do the public hearing, then funds are available in September. We would have access to the funds to sort of begin working towards these projects, if I understood correctly.
Yes, sir.
And so I guess, and I'm supporting this, I like all this in the sense that it's revenue neutral. The piece that's most appealing to me is that $1 million in other funding as towards those shade structures we talked about, because I'd really, 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 as many times as you want to repeat, like to see us look at getting those shade structures up at those elementary schools as rapidly as we can. And I don't know what you need from the board to sort of move that, but I'm in favor, and whatever you need from us to get that shade structure thing going, given that it was like 108 2 days ago, would be something I'm very interested in, because we've got a lot of little ones out there in the heat.
Trustee Marks?
Okay, so I just want to make sure I understand this. So the $24.5 million, we'd have to take out a loan in order to do that at a 4%.
Mhm.
Then we are going to have 25 years to pay it back.
Yes.
And that'll be based on the savings that we receive from the reduced energy costs, or because of solar and because of LED lights.
That's exactly correct. You did that
Okay.
very well.
All right. All right. I just want to make
Good.
sure I heard you correctly, because I thought, wait a minute, we got to take out a loan. So I don't know, 25 years, 4%. I didn't do the math in my head, but
So here's the way.
Help me out,
Here's the way I would look at it. So one of the slides, it gave you the first year of savings.
Right.
Right. $1,360,000. So $1,360,000 over 25 years is about $34 million. Plus, there's the additional $1 million in incentives. Again, not state money, but MID, Turlock Irrigation District, and for the battery storage. That's $35 million. The loan repayment is close to 39, call it $39 million.
Okay.
Now you're going to have some expenses because the panels, obviously, they have to be cleaned every year. But really, you do need. I mean, if you think energy costs are not going to move at all, then there would be a shortfall, assuming no state funds.
Right.
We know that's just it's just not going to happen. So I think you're pretty close, but you do need energy prices to go up over time.
Okay.
And that's where that escalation rate comes in.
Okay, thank you.
Right. I had a question. Any more questions? I had a question. This term lease revenue bond. So who is loaning us the money?
Well, we do have our underwriters here in the audience, Ralph Holmes and Catherine Perkins. They would serve as the underwriters. So what that means is the district has issued a form of lease revenue bonds in the past, your qualified school construction bonds, and basically under California law, in order to issue debt, you either need voter approval or you need the financing to be structured as a lease. The lease revenue bonds is simply a way for the district to effectuate, to select a leased asset, which is leased to your JPA that you have in place, and it's leased back. In return, the district gets the $24.5 million for the project and agrees to make payments to pay off the bonds. Now, that obligation is sold by the underwriters to investors who are basically going to bid an interest rate to purchase those bonds. And our job is to make sure that we get the lowest interest rates and lowest cost possible, because that every dollar in cost is a dollar that we don't get in savings. So that's actually the process for the lease revenue bonds. There will be on August 13th, there will actually be a public hearing where not only the district board approves the lease revenue bonds, but also the JPA board approves that issuance as well. And I will be here to present the documents to you and explain them so you can see exactly what's going on. But in a summary form, that's what it is.
I have another question.
Yes, Trustee Marks.
So on the interest, on the interest, is it going to be? Are we locking it in at 4%? If it goes down, can we?
Sure, 4% is basically just a rough estimate.
Okay.
But that interest rate is locked in on September 5th.
Okay.
Okay. We can't lock it in right now because we don't have a financing in place, but it will. We're going to enter into what's called a bond purchase agreement, which guarantees that interest rate on September 5th, and hopefully we'll be.
Okay.
At that rate. I mean, that's just a market rate. We don't know what the future will hold, but once that rate is established, it's fixed for the entire term of the financing.
Okay.
And by the way, if we were to go out to market and there wasn't sufficient savings and this was a cost, then how would we recommend that you would want to go forward?
Right. Okay. that's helpful. I just was concerned because sometimes they can fluctuate, and I was also, I know in the past we've had geo bonds, so I'm not as familiar with the lease revenue bond that you
Structure.
suggested. So just only because anyway, over the years, there's been some different kinds of bonds that we've issued as a district, and then a lot of them are based on our rating, at least from my understanding. And then the interest rate, at one point, we were able to reduce the interest rate and save quite a lot of money on one of them. So I didn't know if that's a possibility in the future or not, but I know they can go up. So I'd rather lock it in at 4% and stay there instead of going up if it goes up.
Right. We're going to move as quickly as possible because we are in an escalating rate environment.
Yep.
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Do you have a question? Trustee Walker?
I just want to clarify because I asked a question privately that may not be aware to everybody else up here. Is that one of the things when they talk about the battery backups on the solar thing, because I asked because I've got solar panels on my roof, it's not all clear to me how much money I'm saving, but they look good. Was that the question they asked about the battery backup was that it's going on 2 sites, not all 3 of them, and it's Johansson and Bayer because it's economically feasible. Whereas if we bought batteries and tried to do a battery backup system at Enox, it ends up exceeding sort of this cost of diminishing returns. In the sense that they built that in, which also made me feel better about the project, was that we didn't put the batteries somewhere just to say we did. We're putting them where it makes sense, which also gave me sort of a comfort level going forward that it wasn't just for looks.
All right. Any more questions? I had one. This might be for Mr. Zierli. What does this do to our debt ratio and our debt tolerance? Because we're looking at a bond, and then so this is 24 million, and then we're looking at a bond tonight for 74, and then 55, and so just tallying all this up, and what does that do? Is that something that we need to be concerned about in terms of total numbers?
Well, this would be separate from the bond debt.
Yes.
And so, yes, we need to be aware of our debt ratios. But 24 million, Dwayne may be able to help out with this, but 24 million would not put us above any ratios that we would need to be in monitoring.
Okay, thank you. And then I had one more question. And this, it looks like there's some overlap with the bond in terms of the shade structures. And so this will be done simultaneous with the bond. So if we get this money through the lease, we couldn't use bond money to repay this loan payment, right?
Yes, and one thing we talked about is because of the bond. Let's assume the bond passes in November. There's a delay in when we can actually recognize receipt of the bond funds. $1 million built into this project for contingency items would give us what we've called in the past quick strike projects, things we can get out there quickly, be in the public's eye, and provide, as Trustee Walker points out, provide a really important need to many of our schools. So it would enhance, we believe, it would be able to enhance going forward during the bond campaign.
All right, thank you. All right, any more questions from...
Can I do one follow-up based on what you asked? Because I think the other thing that's important to sort of understand from a public perspective, and maybe from this, is that when we talked about the bond, the general bond that we're talking about going to the voters with, odds are that we're not going to get that out in time with projects in the hopper to get reimbursed. My understanding is there's close to $2 billion sitting out there that they have not released, that the way we're using this particular amount of money, we could eventually get reimbursed for almost all of this, whereas the bond going to the voters is probably not going to fall into that category. And so even though we have the cost saving, my understanding is by doing this, we were able to get into the hopper, get in line in the queue to get reimbursed on that last round of that $9 billion that hasn't, two of it haven't gone out.
Yes, that is the statewide voter-approved school facility bond. Yes, that's separate from, that would be separate from our local bond measure. And just to be clear, for Trustee Marks, I believe, Jeff, she was asking, I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, is this refinanceable over the 25 years? So if it drops below 4%, can we refinance and save the district money?
Yes, after 10 years.
Okay. All right, good.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. All right, any more questions from the board? All right, let's go to the public for questions or comments. All right, coming back to the board, this was a report only, so thank you. If there's any comments, closing comments, then we move on to the next item on agenda, which is B7, the approval of local control and accountability plan, the LCAP. And I'd like to turn it over to our superintendent, Craig Renquist.
And Associate Superintendent Marla Mack will do this presentation.
Good evening. Tonight we bring the final draft of 2018-2019 Local Control and Accountability Plan, LCAP, for your approval. We want to thank our stakeholders for their recommendations into the plan. Our district provides a 6-page reader-friendly placement which provides transparency of our goals, actions, and services for the public. Both the placement and the CDE template have been uploaded on our website for the public to view. On June 4th, 2018, a public meeting was held on the LCAP. Data on the placement has been updated from the last meeting, and we are still waiting for some results to come in. For example, graduation and dropout rate. We were informed last week that the release of graduation and dropout rate data has been postponed until July. The district will provide final data results at a future meeting. Minor changes have been made to the CDE template since a public meeting to align to Stanislaus County of Education recommendations. For example, some baseline data needed to be changed and the budget, which needed to include dollar signs and commas. No goals, actions, or services have been changed from the public meeting. The plan has been reviewed by Stanislaus County of Education for tonight's approval. The district recommends approval of the 2018-19 Local Control and Accountability Plan.
Thank you, Ms. Mack. Are there any questions of Ms. Mack or our staff from the board? All right, Trustee Walker.
Okay, so in recent meetings, the advocates for the Language Institute have questioned our support. The LCAP shows that we will maintain support at current levels. What does our current level of support look like if we break it down on a per pupil basis? And if that's possible.
Yeah, that is possible. I do have a chart that I'd like, if I can hand out to the board and the public, we can review this information.
Thank you.
Great.
So the chart I handed out, and I must admit, in 3 days I'll have been here a year, and my apologies to Ms. Bird and the LI program. Up until about 3 months ago, I didn't really know much about this program, and so this is very helpful to me to review this and to take a look at it. But this chart demonstrates the substantial per pupil support by the district since the establishment of the LI program. And so what you see here is a comparison of our 912 student population. And when I mean by 912, this is a comparison of what we spend at our comprehensive school sites versus what we spend for the LI program. And so you can see at the bottom, the blue level. We've talked about this. We've heard this before. We've heard it many times. We've heard it in the budget presentation. We've heard it in talks about the LCAP, funding for the LI program and other programs. We have base funding that we spend, and these are dollars that we spend, not dollars that we generate, just to be clear. Base funding that we spend, which is represented by the blue bar, and then we have supplemental services that we provide programmatically that are represented by the orange piece. So that would be above the baseline level of expenditures, and typically these are services that are funded for and provided through the local control accountability plan. And so as you can see, there's been a substantial, what I would call a substantial investment on behalf of the district for services provided to the Language Institute. And I want to be clear, this is not pitting the Language Institute versus other programs. This is just simply to answer the question, how much do we spend per pupil for this program versus what we would call a general education student? And that, a lot of times that could be subjective based on who's asking the question, but that's how we account for our dollars. And our dollars are provided to our school sites, in this case, 7 comprehensive school sites, to run the 9-12 general education program. That could be anything at that school site. That could be administrative costs, that could be operational costs, any support staff, athletics, anything we can identify as a cost to that school site would be represented in the general education column. And you can see by the blue bar, the general education column in the Language Institute is equal. So the amount of base funding provided to whatever student is at that school is the same. What we're talking about here is what is the supplemental support or additional funds. And it could come from any number of areas, the LCAP being one of those. It could come from any other categorical programs that we still have, mainly the titles or the federal programs. And so you see here, that is represented by the orange bar. What this does not include is if somebody was to look at our SARCs, our Student Accountability and Review card, you'll see a different number, because the SARC data includes all district costs. We have a $350 million general fund budget, and so all of those costs get allocated as a per student cost. In this particular example, these are only costs identified by that school site, which does not include any district-wide administrative support for the district office or transportation or any other support department. Those would be included in the SARC, so you would see probably a higher per pupil expenditure in that case, but these are just what we've allocated to the school site in the form of our budget. So again, what this represents, about excess, if you go back to the beginning, an extra $5 million have been allocated to the Language Institute program. If you were to supply a number to each one of those years in the form of a budget, it's about $5 million, in excess of $5 million, that has been added for the Language Institute program.
Thank you, guys. I guess, because sort of I think what's gotten misinterpreted here is, one, I appreciate the numbers because I think it helps to put a number and a picture to a story. But I think also what sort of concerns me is when we look at how do we balance these competing needs. And I think that's the question that I think we have to look at going forward is we're now capped out. And outside of something dramatic happening in Sacramento, we're at full funding and we're max, but we've got competing needs here in the sense that elementary level at K through 8, we have English learners who I think we need to get more support to. I think that we've got economically disadvantaged that also goes into that supplemental concentration grant money. Those numbers aren't looking as good as they should. And so when we're looking at the district at a 30,000 foot level, or maybe 50, there's 30,000 students, how do we balance these competing needs without getting into the argument that's gone on sort of here where we're picking winners and losers, but making the best decisions for all of our students in that process, if that makes sense?
Ultimately, we want to continue to support the Language Institute in the winning program. It is a wonderful program that we service our EL students in Roosevelt and Davis High School. at the same time, we have seen that need, and we really need to look at that 4th through 6th grade area of those students that are in need in our 4th through 6th grade, and also balancing, like you are suggesting, not just ELs, but all students, because our test scores are showing the need. If you look on our LCAP tonight, we have a lot of areas not met in our academics. So we do need to look at how we are servicing in those programs, and at this time they are not receiving the funds as much as it shows on this chart here for LI, but that we do have some plans in this LCAP, if it's approved tonight, that we can enhance. We have a plan that we are going to look at 4th through 6th graders and pilot some programs in our elementary schools to support our elementary schools. So this plan is trying to address some of the needs that we have to enhance some of the supplemental funds in those areas.
Thank you, because I think people need to understand how tough these decisions are when you have competing interests, and it doesn't mean you're picking one side or the other, or am I picking one side or the other at any given point, but you've got to balance all these interests with a limited amount of resources, and there's a lot of competition out there for them, and it ends up sort of being up here when there's the fierce fight, and I appreciate the help and the information. Thank you.
Trustee West.
So with the additional costs for 4th through 6th grade that we're looking at next year, it looks like our projected funds will not be diminished for the 9 through 12. It looks like we still have funds there, and then on top of that, we'll be providing extra for 4th through 6th. Thank you.
Did I answer that, or
Did you get an answer on that? Okay.
Yes, you're correct, Dr. West. We are not proposing right now to cut any funds. Mr. Zierli can explain why there's a little bit of a drop, but there is no proposal to drop any of the funds in Language Institute. It's just to enhance some other programs.
Maybe Mr. Zierli could explain. There's just a slight drop on the chart. That might be helpful.
Yeah, in 17-18 there was some one-time expenses for the program that are one-time in nature, so we won't need them again in 18-19, and so they've been removed from the projection, and so that's why you see just a minor drop in the two bars when you compare the current year versus our projection year. And again, just to be clear, this does not include the LI program at Roosevelt. We didn't do that on purpose to leave it off. This was just strictly a comparison, a per pupil comparison for our 9-12 population. And we do have as well an LI program at Roosevelt for 7-8.
Great. Are there any more questions of staff? All right, then I'll turn it to the audience. Are there any questions or comments? All right, right here. Do you want to come up to the podium? Okay, maybe we could bring a microphone to her. Thank you. Over on the edge over here. Thank you.
Thank you.
I hope you feel better soon.
Well, thank you. That's kind. Hi, my name is Rose Mitchell, and I'm with the NAACP Education Committee, and I wanted to direct my question perhaps to Marla about the plan that you indicated that you have or it will be in place for additional LCAP funds with students who need more services than what's allotted for. Is there a plan, and is there a way that the public or interested individuals can see that plan to see what's in it? And were there more than the board members involved? Was there other feedback from community or teachers or parents that gave you information toward that plan that you have?
The plan that's in the works, it's still in the works, is to pilot. We are looking at the data of newcomers coming in from 4th through 6th grade, and that would be about students that are coming in for the first 3 years of their education as a newcomer. And so there's 3 schools, would be Bret Harte, Burbank, and one other school, and we're looking at how we can service those students. So that plan is still in the works. We have some few things that we still have to work out to get it in place for 18-19.
And certainly there more youth, students in school who need services, additional services in just reading and math. How are those needs included in your plan?
In this year's plan, we also, to address other needs that we have the academic needs also that we mentioned, but we also have social needs and working with social needs. So in this plan, there's also a recommendation, if the board approves tonight, to add two clinicians that Mr. Herbst might be able to add to. That's over his area. So there's several different pieces. We're not looking at just one answer because we know we have several needs in the district. So our plan includes several areas.
And again, I'll ask, how do you outreach for other information that you don't have perhaps, but perhaps community members have it, perhaps other teachers have it, or
that is the
parents?
purpose of our LCAP stakeholder meetings, and that we have several different organizations in our LCAP's stakeholder meetings, and that's where we receive our information. We also have had many stakeholder meetings that we went over at the last meeting.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Right. Ms. Barrera. He's got the microphone, so thank you for bringing it to and from.
Thank you. I'm just so accustomed to robotic, just going towards it. My questions are, what I do with my notes? Oh, there we go. I'm a hot mess right now. Excuse me. My name is Debbie Barrera. We are La Raza Parents Union, Social Justice Movement, Student Advocates. But I wasn't the one that actually originated this. It was someone by the name of Felipe Alvarez. And Felipe Alvarez was really vested in the English learners. But maybe 7 years ago, Felipe Alvarez was voicing what we're going to just now do in research for these schools, Bret Hart, Burbank, and I'm sorry, what was the third one, Marla?
You know what? I didn't bring it with me tonight.
Okay, well, you know, Felipe Alvarez tried to bring this to the governing board. He even went to Office of Civil Rights, and even back then, it was said that everything's set in stone. Everything's placed. And now we're hearing otherwise. So I just want to go on the record with that in case we need to use it at further times in other litigations. My question is, Marla, you mentioned it's that are not receiving the funds. How far back are we talking that they're not receiving these funds, that now you have to distribute them in different locations?
I don't think
that's, maybe I misunderstood you. That's one question. The other question is, you enhanced the Institute of Learning fundings for the 17-18, because you guys used the funds one time, so now you're taking it away. Can we receive that type of data on what it was used for and why it's now being removed? That would be the second question. And I just want to go on record on behalf of Felipe Alvarez, because he's actually the one that formed this. I'm just the mouthpiece to it all. Thank you.
Thank you. Could we address her questions if possible?
I didn't quote not receiving funds. All I was quoting that we want to increase the supplemental funds because we received more money this year. And so we're looking at our data and seeing what our needs were. For example, the newcomers program that we are going to pilot, that would be one area of many suggestions that we're increasing. We went over several increasing pieces in this plan last time we met. So that was just one area.
Great. And then Mr. Zierli on the funding question.
Yeah, keep in mind, these are per pupil. They're an average per pupil expenditure. So even if we kept the spending the same and yet we had more students, it would look like we're spending less per student because now we have more students in the program and spending the same amount of dollars. So that could be one. When we're doing our projection, we try to project based on what we're currently doing and project that out into next year right now as a starting point. So that could be one thing. But this year, you notice there was a spike in 17-18. There was additional supplemental services added for any number of things, but it was to reduce class sizes, longer day. There was an extra period. There was bilingual instructional paraprofessionals. There was some supplemental curriculum that was purchased. And so those supplemental curriculum, I mean, if we purchased it in 1 year, we don't need it again next year. We don't anticipate spending it. It's not included in the projection for the next year. So it could be any number of things. If you want specifics, we can have, I can have the department pull that together and get you that.
If you don't mind, on behalf of community and the parents, because here's my question. Well, I have two now. I don't know where to put it in 7 or 8, but in this plan, is Title III included? Yes? Is that a yes, Marta? Can you go on record for that?
It's not my place to answer, sorry.
Is Title III included, sir?
There are Title III funds in the additional funding.
In the
orange
IL
piece.
funding, is there any Title III included in that IL? In the
orange bar, yes.
But in the LCAP for 18-19, is Title III included?
Majority of it's supplemental concentration, and
Right.
that's mixed into the orange bars along with Title III, other titles.
So I'm gonna
Title
take that as
I,
a yes?
Title II, Title III, Title IV.
So is that a yes?
There could be some, but our main one is supplemental concentration.
So is that a yes, sir?
There could be some, yes.
Just in the grade line then? Could be. That's your answer? Could be?
Yeah, she answered that. So thank you. Do you
okay.
have any other questions, Ms. Barrera?
Not at this point on time. I will reserve for the next time.
Thank you. All right. Any other questions from the audience? Yes, Ms. Bird.
So the purpose of this graphic is exactly what I alluded to in my public comments earlier. Just for those who are in the audience that aren't aware, we've been speaking above the board based on nothing to necessarily do with funding. We've been requesting that our students with gaps in their education over the age of 18 be given access, which we were able to confirm at the last meeting. They do receive ADA and, like you mentioned, concentration grant funding. We've been pointing out how we could offset this orange disproportionality with different grants and other funding sources intended for these students. But to compare our students to general education students with no breakdown is very disingenuous because, like Ms. Barrera said, there are Title III funds that are earmarked by the federal government specifically for immigrant students in the country less than 3 years that are part of this orange bar. So to compare it to the blue bar doesn't serve any purpose except to politicize doing the job, which is to support and educate all students in this district. That does not mean equally. Some need more, and immigrants and refugees arriving with no formal education, no mastery of the alphabet are going to need more services. So again, if we have a need with newcomers at 4th through 6th grade, let's get together. I know we could learn from the elementary teachers because no one taught me how to teach a student to read when I was getting a history credential, and maybe we might be able to offer them something. Putting us up here and pitting us against one another serves no purpose other than politics. And I will not let my students be used as political pawns so that someone can make a point that they don't deserve as much as they do. We have proven success. These students are graduating at astronomical rates. Whatever this orange bar represents is working. And I appreciate that you're making this statement that you're going to continue to fund us. I'm not questioning that. I'm happy we're having this conversation publicly. But remember, the reason this is on the screen is because we were fighting for access for students to stay in school. We never came with our hand out. We never asked for more money. In fact, funding, building, and creating an adult school would cost money. So if anything, our option was the cheaper option. If money is all that we care about, then what we proposed would have been the cheaper. I would love to see the breakdown of all of this because as a teacher in the trenches, I know where we purchase curriculum. I know where we instituted the staffing formula because our students come throughout the year and we can't staff according to attrition. I could possibly give some insights into some of this, but to be honest, some of it just doesn't even make sense. The fact that we were higher last year than other years. Ms. Herrera and I have been in this program forever. We looked at each other and we could be wrong with that breakdown. Maybe we'll be enlightened. We are not claiming to be experts that know everything, but this serves no purpose but politics.
Mr. Peterson?
Good evening, Board. Chris Peterson, Modesto High School. On behalf of MTA, I understand the request of this graph, but if, as an educator, if I ask the question, general population versus resource, the graphs would be the same.
Mm-hmm.
If I said general education, special ed, the graphs would be the same. Special needs, the graph would be the same. I understand the request of data. I'm not sure what this graph, how it helps the discussion. If we start pitting our most vulnerable students against each other, we're in a mess. I think we need to step back and consider what this does to the community. I'm not sure it accomplished its task. It intensified voices even more aggressively. It's not helping, guys.
All right, Ms. Williams.
You know, I'm real disturbed by this chart. This chart is very difficult to understand. It's misleading to the audience, and it gives the error that you're spending all this money on the English Institute, the Language Institute, and you're not spending much on general education. And I'm looking at how much you're saying that you're spending on general education. I can't believe it's that low. And you show this bar here where you've got 12,000, or is it a little more than over 10,000, maybe $11,000 per student. It looks like you're trying to pit people. And I don't know if that's your intent or not, but that's the intent that we are getting out there. And I don't want to see this type of activity go on at a board meeting. We need to be honest, and we need to be clear and concise with what we spend on students. And we have to meet the needs of every child who comes to us. And if it takes a little bit more to meet the needs of a special needs student, we all know that that's going to take more. But to put it like this, it looks like, wow, we're just over the top with the Language Institute. And I know that cannot be true, that it's that far away. So I would like to see somebody come back with better figures, and figures that we as general citizens can understand when you come before us with this financial. Don't give us this mumbo jumbo that is here, and I'm not even sure why this is here like this. I'm not understanding it at all. Thank you.
Any other questions from the audience? Yes. Oh, bring him on up too. Okay. Yeah, can we bring her a microphone?
Wait, just hold on. Hold your. And his guardian, I know it has taken 2 years to get into place the skilled personnel that to get him the help that he needs, to get him the resources that he needs, going back and forth with funding and program and ego and wanting to be up front on an issue and put your name on the title is not helping the children. Like I said, it's taken 2 years, and we finally got a team in place that is going to be working for him on his behalf. And like a couple of the speakers have already said, not everybody learns at the same rate and pace. I know for a fact this one doesn't. I know there are more than him. So I appreciate everything that everyone in the Modesto City School System has done, everyone at John Muir, everyone, well, not everyone, but Rose Avenue, oh my goodness. And I'm hearing these schools, but it's not just limited to certain schools, it's everywhere. People live everywhere, and the learning disabilities are everywhere. So I'm relatively new to this LCAP. I guess it was in place when I was going to school. My mother was an advocate. I went back and forth with my daughters in it, so I'm on the late train, but now I'm here with my grandson, and it's kind of frustrating that I have to go through this. He's just now in first grade, and he's behind. He's been in Head Start, and he's still not where he needs to be. So I don't know how that fits into you guys' graphs and charts, but I'm dealing with it on a real life flesh and blood level, not look at a paper and where do we put the funds.
Would you be willing to give your information to Mr. Herbst? He's going to come back there and get your information so we could contact you to deal with that on a further basis.
If it helps my grandson, I've been saying, if it helps
Thank
my
you.
grandson and others, I'm
Thank
more
you.
than willing.
And if we could go get the microphone again, thank you so much.
Thank you. No.
All right, any more public comments? Yes, Miss Lumen.
Thank you.
Hi, thanks. I just want to reiterate some of the previous statements that have been made. I think the graph here represents, again, a misunderstanding of the issue of equity versus equality for students with special needs or special student populations. I don't think there's any argument that language instruction costs more, just like it costs more to educate students with special needs or students even in the IB program. Funding for language learners and comparing those with the general student population is not a fair comparison. It might even be considered a faulty comparison because these groups might be considered the proverbial apples and oranges. If we are going to go ahead and make comparisons like this, it should be with other groups who also have special needs and require additional funding. And I think that again, I think this graph, this discussion speaks to, again, that these issues are not being viewed with an equity lens, rather an equality lens. And that does not serve everyone. We don't win that way as a community, as educators, as parents of students. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, anyone else? All right, Mr. Piersdorf. Mr. Peterson. He's unforgettable.
I'm just gonna just put a little positive spin on this. I think this is a great graph because, as Mr. Peterman said, Peterson said, whether this is a special education graph or language institute graph, we're spending more on populations that are more vulnerable and need more support. And so this shows us that we are spending money on a population that needs that, and it's an excellent program. And so I applaud this board for supporting the Language Institute and special education and all the other programs and all the other students who need that extra support. So thank you for this graph, and I applaud the board for their spending well.
Thank you. All right. Any other questions? All right. Oh, Ms. Villalobos.
I'd just like to emphasize two words, vulnerable and investment. You mentioned that this was an investment. Yes, these students are vulnerable. If not given the proper opportunities, they will continue to be vulnerable. But as we can see, as has been shown, they have been given wonderful opportunities, those who qualify. More need to be included. However, by giving them these opportunities, we are making that investment that will pay off to all of us, particularly those of us who are over 40, 50, 60. We will be reaping the benefits of these students even sooner. But we're not replacing ourselves once again. These students are going to college, graduating from college, working, our future teachers, lawyers, etc., engineers. We need these students. Our investment will pay off as long as we continue it. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, any more questions? Dr. Herrera?
Hi there.
I guess it's more so a comment. So though I do believe that with the LCAP process on the board's part and MCS, I really feel that you guys need to do a better job training the community in these types of stakeholder meetings, because at this point, some of the meetings that I've been in remain kind of superficial. And so unless you really teach the community and the parents and the various advocates and stakeholders about certain pieces of education and the vocabulary and what certain things mean, it really is working to your benefit to keep people ignorant of knowledge, right? So that's one. But so though I understand that, I also understand that there are quite a few people within our community, especially those sitting here, that have brains. And so in this particular case, I know Ms. Williams was referencing that it's mumbo jumbo, and though I completely understood what she meant, actually this is really clear. But the unfortunate part is that it's just not specific. And I hope that you guys would see more in us, in the community, and the teachers, and to understand that we can understand a chart's more complicated than this. And so really this is an example of what Ms. Bird was talking about, being, you know, really trying to politicize our program, because if, you know, on purpose, it seems like the intention was to just keep it simple and hope nobody asks questions, right? But in fact, you know, we have the education to understand, line by line and how things work, and what things mean, and the cost of per pupil and those breakdowns. And so I hope that in the future, when you ask for questions or ask about for graphs like this, that you would take into consideration that your community isn't a dumb one, and we can handle a more complicated graph that differentiates and disaggregates the way that you guys disseminate your dollars. Thanks.
Thank you. All right, any more questions? All right, back to the board for comment and a motion. All right, Trustee Marks.
I really appreciate your comments. Mr. Piersdorf said what I wanted to say was that let's turn this around into a positive, and to me, this is my first time seeing this graph, and I like numbers and I like graphs. I like graphs because I'm visual, and so this was like a good visual, but also I like the data. So I know staff, I don't know how long they had to put this together. I don't know who asked or when they were asked to do this. So I appreciate that they put something together just to at least answer that question for whoever asked it. But I want to acknowledge that the board has, to me, this was an acknowledgement of the board's investment into the students that are in the Language Institute. We're not planning to cut those funds. We haven't made any plans to cut those funds, as you can tell. And so I just want to say that, and I appreciate that Ms. Bird has brought many students for us to see and hear. I had the opportunity to work with one last year on a committee and really appreciated that, because I got to know just her appreciation for public education, which she would not have had access to in another country that she came from. She learned English very quickly. Within 3 years, she learned English. She became proficient at it. She also was able to complete her graduation in high school and go on and get a grant to go to, not a grant, but a scholarship to UC Davis. And so, but to hear her speak and to hear the students come and speak and to know their heart, their passion for education, I wish all our students had that passion. And I know it's contagious at the school, at Davis High School, where they're at, for the students and how much they have to overcome to become a student here. And so I just want to say thank you that we have heard from you, and that our staff has taken the time to present this, though I could tell it wasn't received very well, but to present this to all of you tonight, and to us too. But just to acknowledge for me too, to see, I didn't know this. I learned this tonight as well. The amount, I mean, I saw numbers before on a last meeting. We had the numbers, and so this gave a graph to show the number, actually just showing it. So I thank you that, and I thank Mr. Peterson too, because I was thinking the same thoughts that you had, that we do invest, and if we did see a graph of our special education students, didn't mean to bump that, special education students, that we would see similar numbers as this, and we would see, or even maybe more. The orange line might be a lot higher, especially for certain ones of our students. So I'm appreciative that our board has continued on in making investments into our most needy students, and then also making investments into the students that we feel, I'm still getting lots of feedback, so I don't know who's fixing that, but anyway, making an investment into our elementary students that really need that language support, and so that when they do get to junior high and high school, they are fully prepared and can be successful. And I hope that we could have some of these students who've left our district and gone on to college come back and talk about their experience and share with the other students of what they've overcome, especially coming from mostly war-torn countries, and overcoming not only, I'm going to just say PTSD, I'm sure they're dealing with some of that, and learning English, and then being able to be very successful in our school district. Not to diminish any of our students who've gone through very traumatic experiences as well, but just to see that there's a dedication by our staff. And I appreciate your passion. All of you have spoken with great passion over the last few months to us, so we appreciate that you're very passionate. And I hope we can find some other funding. I'm working with staff. We're going to see if there's something we can do that might be able to alleviate some of this, so that we have more funding for some of our other programs that we like to support with our students as well. So I'm hoping we can make not take advantage of it, but at least find some other funding in other grant ways that can help also with this program. So I appreciate your just your heart and your passion for our students and our community, and just that this has been a long-term commitment. We've been doing this for 10 years now, so this is a long-term commitment by our staff, and so I appreciate that, and all those that came into our district even while we've already been doing this program. So I appreciate your investment as well into this, and just the support of the community as we move forward and how we have this discussion. So I'm hoping that we can still have an open dialogue, and maybe set aside some of our, I don't know what to call it, but our ability to listen, to be more, just for all of us to be able to listen better, because I feel like we've all put up some barriers and some walls in many areas just because we have our own preconceived ideas. And I've learned so much. I just can't tell you how much I've learned just investigating and trying to understand this program and all that we do for the students. So thank you again for your just your commitment, and I thank our staff too, because I know they've spent a lot of time, working on this, and I appreciate that, because I know it's taken a lot of their time away from other things. So, but just that we do acknowledge you and what you're doing. So thank you.
Trustee Brown.
So I want to thank everyone who's been willing to speak tonight on this question. And as this graph was handed to me, I was concerned with a lot of the same things that I've heard from many of the speakers. It appeared at first glance that this was putting orange students against blue students, and that it was opening the door for politicizing something that doesn't need to be. So for me, this is not a statement of the Languages Institute, but it is an evaluation of how our LCAP process is working. It tells me that through this process, we now have more control locally to take care of all of our students of great need. And those students range from those who have the most difficult time learning, our special ed students, all the way through, including our Language Institute students, but also our most gifted and advanced students who we have to spend disproportionate amounts of money to make sure that they learn at their best capacity. So I want to make sure that we don't classify our students by color, and that we do classify our students by opportunity and by the ability to help them become who they have a God-given right to become, every single one of them. I also have heard something that really resonates with me tonight, and that is that the LCAP is about dollars, but what we're about as a board is opportunity. And when I hear the statements of passion and dedication from our audience, from those that are leading students with our greatest needs. I want to figure out how we bottle that passion, how we bottle that dedication and put it in every single classroom so that every student, whether they're at an orange level or a blue level for funding, get the same lift and benefit from education, that our test scores will be driven upwards in every classroom because of this passion that we have in some very successful programs. It's more than the dollars. It's about how we treat every student and what we do with what limited resources we have and spread them equitably everywhere.
Trustee West?
Trustee Brown, I really appreciate what you said, and I appreciate the comments that we've had from the audience tonight. I want you to know we are working with you. We're not your enemies. We really want to work for these children. I saw so many beautiful hearts of those students who came and spoke, and so much potential, and so much future in those bright minds. We care about them. We really do. We're trying to figure out how to help. Dr. Hernandez, I appreciate what you said about the LCAP committee stakeholders. If we are using language that people can't understand, then shame on us. We need to meet parents and meet people, our community members, in a way that we can work together as a team. We want to do that. Please understand. We're with you. We're on your side. And so hopefully we can all work together and our students are going to benefit. We saw tonight the influence that teachers had on this police officer that came up. I'm sorry, I forgot his name, but the teachers out there, those are the ones that are touching the lives of our students. You are important to those kids. I agree. The passion that you have, I wish all of our students could experience that. So please, we have a new page. Let's start fresh and let's work together to help those kids.
Trustee Lopez?
Yeah, I'm gonna start off thanking one of my teachers that's in the crowd, Ms. Villalobos, because of the great work, and definitely I think that I don't know if it connotated in dollar amounts, but she put me in the orange section of investment by motivation. So I want to thank her first. This graph alone, like I shared what many of you guys shared tonight. Concerns, but if we look back month to month, board meeting to board meeting over the last 6 months, this is a true testament of equity, because you see the students that came up and you see the work and them speaking in public for the first time in a foreign language to them, and it shows and it backs up these numbers to the great work that the Language Institute has done. I definitely think that this board and with your guys' help is always going to work toward equities. So I thank everyone, staff, community for allowing this to be successful. Thanks.
Trustee Walker?
So I'm the one that requested the report, and I actually requested a lot more. And the reason was to show how much we are supporting the Language Institute, because the message out of the last 3 months was that we weren't. And the intention out there may have been to say that we were. It wasn't the message received here. It just wasn't, because it was all about we aren't being equitable. And I knew what the numbers were, and if we showed the numbers, that people would understand we are supporting this program. We continue to support the program, but there's also competing needs. I've got 11,000 students at the elementary level that need help in reading and writing, that are economically disadvantaged. I've got 5,000 students at the elementary level that are English learners that need help and support reading and writing. As you've mentioned, we have special ed students who need help. That funding continues to go up on our end without reciprocation from the state. I think this going forward, I want more pictures. I will propose at the end of the meeting a way to do that. That was given to us at a board workshop. so that we can plug more data in so that Mrs. Williams can see what she wants to see. Mrs. Berg can see what she wants to see. Any board member can look at what they want to look at, and you can get a complete picture. We're all going to support this LCAP. And I think going forward, as you've mentioned tonight, more people at the meeting, I have all intentions of being involved going forward, because I think there's lots of programs that need focus and support and understanding from the board, and we haven't taken an active role in this process in the past that I'm aware of. There certainly hasn't been one of us involved in that process since I've been here. And as a parent and a board member, I want to be involved so that I'm not finding out after the fact where this went, where that went, or what a concern is, and we address it before it gets to this level, because we're all supporting our students. We just saw it. It's not just a language institute. It could be the IB program, as you mentioned, but there's forensic biology, there's ag welding. I've got teachers talking to me about creating another computer programming course, which I think is a great idea. How do we deal with all these competing issues? Because at some point, the funding tops out, and we're at a top out point now, which means we need to start looking closer at the data and figure out how we balance, which was my intention, was to get the numbers out, be transparent, be open, and then let's have an honest conversation about where we put resources and who needs help here, because we have a lot of students who need help.
I just want to say thank you to the speakers tonight, the Language Institute advocates that came and said thank you. I'm just acknowledging the district's commitment to this program. That goes a long way, and I really appreciate that. And I think that the LCAP, as we have before us tonight, shows that continued commitment. The graph shows the commitment in a graphic form, but I think the words on the LCAP show our commitment as a district to these vulnerable students and to many other vulnerable students in our district. I'm really excited about something in the LCAP about our fourth through sixth graders. It was one of the speakers that came with the LCAP, with the Language Institute, that actually enlightened me, and I asked for more information on this when I met with staff, which was one of them talked about having to take ALD courses and couldn't take the academy courses she wanted to take. Well, why did that develop? That developed because she didn't acquire the language skills and have the intensive language skills that she needed earlier. And so if we can address that earlier, then by the time the students can get into high school, they can take those courses that'll change their lives. And that's key. So I'm excited about that. I'm excited what we're going to do on that, and we can fund both. We're not pitting them against each other. So that's what this LCAP represents as we move forward, and I'm excited to vote on this. So I'm looking for a motion for approval. All right, it's been moved by Trustee Marks and seconded by Trustee Walker. All those in favor state aye and raise your hand.
Aye.
Aye. Passes unanimously. We're going to call for a quick break now, and we'll go on to the next item. I could bring the board back to the table. Continue our meeting. All right, thank you for the break. All right, we're full component here. This takes us on to item, so I'd like to call the meeting back to order. This takes us on to item B8, which is the approval of certification of the 2018-19 budget for all funds and authorization to transmit copies to local and state agencies. And so I turn the matter over to Superintendent Renquist.
And it's my privilege again to turn it over to Associate Superintendent Zerly.
Thank you again, trustees. President Newman. It's the order of the agenda is important here, and the reason the budget adoption is second behind the LCAP is because the budget, we have to show that we are implementing the goals, the actions, the services as outlined in the Local Control Accountability Plan. And so in that case, the Local Control Accountability Plan is about dollars, but I just want to be clear, the local control funding formula is what is about dollars, and it's about what drives the dollars into the district and drives the dollars into the Local Control Accountability Plan. So it is important that comes first, and it is important that then the second thing on the agenda is to adopt a budget that shows that we are implementing and we have in the budget everything that you just approved with the prior item. So we did have a public hearing at June 4th. There's been some minor changes to the proposed budget since then, and those are outlined on page 9 of your agenda. Significant changes since the budget hearing, and you can see there's six dots there. I can wait for you to get there if you'd like, but it is 9. It is page 9 of the white pages behind the yellow agenda. And so what we've done here, we've outlined any changes that have happened since the last set of figures we brought to you. We have not increased staffing as the first bullet suggests. This is one of those clarification things that we put down here and we have to clarify. This is a change in the funding source, and this is a change in the funding source for teachers identified in the dual language program. Before, they were fully funded out of supplemental and concentration grant. We figured out that that's not appropriate, the full amount of those teachers to be coded to supplemental and concentration, only the piece of those teachers that have lowered class sizes. So if you go back and think about what the Local Control Accountability Plan is for, it is to increase or improve services to those students that generate the dollars. So if we had a dual language program before, we can't use the dollars to fund what we had, but how are we improving services? And so this is a change in our accounting of teachers. We did not add new teachers, so I just want to be very clear on that bullet. There's been under $100,000, $82,000 of special budget requests that have come to cabinet since June 4th, or the time we prepared the agenda for June 4th to now, and so those are now incorporated in our proposed budget. AB 119, mandatory orientation, that is orientation for new employees, increased special education contribution, and then you can see below the reasons for that. Special education, right now, Mark is determining his staffing needs based on the services needed to provide the students. And so at this point in time, we are increasing our staff based on what we expect the needs to be of our special needs population for the coming year. I just want to point out for my colleague across the table from me, there was a consent agenda item when you approved the final budget revision for this year. We've reduced the contribution by $2 million in the current year, and so I just want to point that out. Mark does an amazing job of watching the budget, even though this seems like a large increase from the last time we brought you a proposal. Again, the student needs change. As we get identification of what the needs are, we have to add staff to provide those services. And so those are the significant changes since the hearing. And I do want to point out that it does state that we have a balanced budget and we do. However, it's very small. We've got a projected deficit totally in unrestricted and restricted of $477,000. So that's a very small deficit. We do consider that a balanced budget because the unrestricted side shows a budget surplus of just under $1.2 million. So we are spending. The reason there's a deficit on the restricted side is because we're spending balances from the prior year. We don't have revenue to offset those expenses. It's coming out of our ending balance, so it projects as a deficit. But we are very pleased at this point, even though it's small in percentage, to ask the board to approve the budget, which is a balanced budget.
Great. Are there any questions for Mr. Zierli? All right, seeing none. Any comments from the board? All right, how about comments from the public? Ms. Barrera.
Debbie Barrera, We Are La Raza Parents Union. I represent the English learners, the foster care, I do foster care, and the low income. We all have seen the news. We have children at the border, caged with aluminum blankets. They will soon be arriving in Southern and Northern California. They will come and they will migrate in Stanislaus County. How many? I don't know. I spoke at the Latino Community Roundtable giving a stat of quotes there. We have close to 58% children, 38 EL. That will be increased. My concern is we're almost tapped out and we have children that will be arriving. Without parents, I'll probably do some fostering there. I don't know, but I'm scared because what I saw tonight, how are we planning on servicing these children? Will we give them more mental health or we give them the English learners funds, which was the language institution? Concerns. Community has them. Parents have them. My mother has them. She's been documenting for 45 years in this community. Think about that one. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, any other questions from the public? All right, seeing none, it comes back to the board for comment. Trustee Walker.
I think that part of what Ms. Barrera is talking about is true. I think that to a certain degree we are topped out at LCFF, but I think the overriding problem in California is that we're running about 41st out of 50 states in funding. And it's not an issue of Modesto City Schools. It's an issue of priorities and how the state allocates money. And it's frustrating. It's very frustrating because we're running 41st. I think the one thing that I'm hopeful about, and Mr. Zierli put up some slides of bills coming through, I think the one that has the most potential to impact will be Mr. Herbst over here. I do think that they're going to come back and bring up the special ed funding. I think that that's one that they'll do, and I think that's one that they'll keep. Because just because the assembly passes something doesn't mean that it actually gets funded. There's a disconnect there because they can pass something in the assembly and then the governor can come back with a budget and not fund it. I actually think special ed has the potential to get both. I think the other ones make me nervous because there's two other bills out there floating that Mr. Zierli's brought up before where they raised the funding at K through level across the state. I think that will be an issue where they pass the bill, and then whichever the incoming governor is will kick a bit to us and say there's not enough, very much like 98 is Prop 98 gets treated as a floor versus a ceiling. And so you'll have one group saying we authorized this much money, and then the governor will come back and give this much money, then they can blame each other for why we don't have the money. But I think you guys have done a great job. I think we manage it well. But I think there are competing interests. But I also think folks made it pretty clear tonight that they're interested in data. And I think they're interested in transparency. I think they're interested in us putting a picture together that is much easier to understand than sort of the big, thick document. And I think we can work together towards that as the year turns around so we get something that's a bit more picture friendly. But I agree. they promise everything and give us a little bit. And it makes it difficult because then we're sitting here answering your question that doesn't have an answer because they promised you the moon and gave you a little bitty slice of pie and then left you to sort of holler at us.
All right, Trustee Brown.
So no questions tonight on this, but a thank you for the process. I think that as a board, we understand the budget better this year than we probably ever have. So thank you for the study session and the preparation that allows us to pass this budget tonight. And kudos to the district for doing difficult things with limited funds. And we do that pretty well. I've been able to witness on the construction committee how much the district has been able to do with limited funds to keep our schools operating at their best capacity. So thank you to all involved in this process.
All right, any other comments from the board? All right, I'm looking for a motion. It's been moved by Trustee Brown and seconded by Trustee Lopez. All right, all those in favor of the budget, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. It passes unanimously. All right, this takes us on to item B8, approval of B9, which is the approval of resolution number 1718-28, ordering an election and establishing specifications of the election order in the Modesto City School Elementary District classroom enhancement. Superintendent Renquist.
Mr. Zierli will introduce the next two items that are both related to the bond issues.
Good evening again, and I have to go back just for a minute. I'd be remiss. The budget, which is just shy, the general fund just shy of $380 million. The three ladies in the back, I did not recognize them. Michelle Price, Senior Director of Financial Services, and her two staff. They're the three ladies that provide all that information in the way they do it. So I apologize, I did not recognize them earlier.
Thank you for correcting that. Thank you to our able staff, Ms. Price and her team. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, so as page B9, the background information, this is not the first time that we've brought this information to the board. We've actually brought it, I believe this will be the third time. Each time we've incorporated suggested changes from the board into the bond language. And so tonight, with the help of our team, who is all here, led by Janet Miller, our legal counsel for bond planning, with Dennis Walliver and Kelly is here, as well as the rest of the bond planning team, who has put in a large number of hours since we kicked this off, the idea of this back in October, to get to this point. So the changes are incorporated. We've removed any language that has to do with technology purchases or computer purchases that would be considered short-term in nature by bond standards. Those have been removed. And so we believe we have a final resolution language for the board to approve in anticipation of the November 2018 general bond election. And with that, again, we do have the team here represented if there's any questions by the board.
All right, are there any questions for Mr. Zierli or his team from the board? All right, to the public, are there any comments or questions regarding the first proposed bond? Ms. Williams.
I just want to say that I am in support of us doing these bonds. This is long overdue. We have facilities that are very outdated, that have long overdue to need replacing. Our cafeterias are not healthy places for our students. And as I said before, when we had our workshop, we spend $70,000 a year on prisoners per year. And then I look at your paper today where we spend less than $6,000. and they say the average for a student per year is $9,000. So we need to invest in our students. If we don't invest in them now, we will invest in them later, and we will spend a lot more tax dollars later on if we don't do early intervention. And I think that's the message that we have to get out to people, is that we want to be proactive, not reactive. Thank you.
Thank you. Any more questions from the public or comments? All right, seeing none, back to the board for comment and a vote. Trustee Walker.
This will cover both of them. I just want to say thank you to everybody that worked on this, because I think if we've gone through this and iterated, we've gotten to a much better place and a much better understanding and sort of pulling out the short-term things and the technology things that we talked about. I think Trustee Brown's leadership on this issue needs to be a thank you as well as the members of the people that have put this together. And I think to Mrs. Williams' point, I did a personal project last weekend. So I pulled up all the dates of when each of our schools was built and created. And you're spot on right. When you look at the elementary schools, you have to get the last two were like 1978, one in the late 80s, then it jumps back to the 50s, and it just drops back from there. And I think that hopefully, if you know anybody, tell them to support the bonds, because I think it also frees up resources to do some of the other things that we're talking about tonight, where we do need to put more resources into certain students and certain programs and certain plans, that if we've got the ability to go out and do the bond work and fix these buildings and do all these things to make them more safer, funner, enjoyable, and better places to be, that we can spend the other monies elsewhere and focus on the academic achievement, which I think is a win-win for everybody. Everybody did a great job. Lots of thank you, thank you, thank you.
Trustee Brown.
If no one else has comments, I would be honored to make the motion.
Yes, we go ahead and make motion has been made by Trustee Brown. It is a resolution, so I need a second, and then we'll call the roll. So a second by Trustee Lopez. So it's been moved and seconded by Trustee Brown and then Trustee Lopez. And would you call the roll?
Trustee Brown.
Aye.
Trustee Lopez.
Aye.
Trustee Marks.
Aye.
Trustee Walker.
Aye.
Trustee West.
Aye.
Board President Newman.
Aye. The motion and resolution passes unanimously. All right, this takes us on to its sister, we'll call it its sister bond motion, which is B10, which again is the approval of resolution number 1718-29, ordering an election and establishing specifications of the election order in the Modesto City School Elementary District, Health and Safety. And so I'd like to turn this over to Mr. Zierli again.
Thank you again. This is the sister or companion item that will appear on the November ballot if approved. This is a $74 million bond measure identified for health and safety improvements, as noted by Trustee Walker, the age and condition of our facilities. So this would provide really immediate necessary improvements for health and safety related issues.
Any questions of staff? I just want to point out that there's two different amounts in these bonds, and one is 74 million that we're looking at now, and the previous one was 55 million, and so there are two different amounts for different purposes. And if you read through very carefully, the purposes are really different, and they're the key findings and what they are. So I just wanted to point that out on there. Any questions? Any other comments or questions from the board? All right, out to the public. Yes, Ms. Mitchell, can we get the microphone to her? Oh no, we need it recorded so everybody's watching us because we're so popular on YouTube. And it's just really important they know who it is. So, and they're going to be unhappy that they can't see your face, but I understand you're not feeling great tonight. So we're glad to hear your comments.
Thank you for that acknowledgement. Okay, my question is, and I had it earlier, but I hesitated to answer it, and I was concerned with the $24 million bond that is being used to with lights and shade and different kinds of comfort things and necessary things in 3 of the high schools, the newer high schools. With the exception of Gregory, it's not mentioned. But the other 2, I think I'm correct with Bayer. Well, I think Bayer was one of the 3. Davis and Modesto High, those schools are so old. Are we saying that they don't need the shade protection and they don't need the lighting updates? I just need some clarity on that, because when this bond, number 10, B10, indicates that this bond is for health and safety. Oh, that's elementary. Okay. So, erase, I suppose. But what would be done for the Davis and Modesto High schools? I mean, they can't be just left off the table without any upgrades or lighting structures being different than what they are.
Maybe Mr. Zierli can better answer your questions, because we've been talking about 3 different bonds.
Yes.
So there's 2 elementary bonds we're discussing now as item B9 and 10.
Yes.
And then the previous bond was proposed, and we didn't vote on that. That was a lease facility bond for some improvements. So
For the
Mr. Zierli
lighting.
can address more of that.
So one of the complexities about our district is we are actually 2 different districts. We're 2 different agencies. We're an elementary district and a high school district. And so to do improvements, voter-approved debt improvements, we would need bond measures for both districts. Any dollars we generate on the elementary with these 2 resolutions cannot be used for our high schools. And we would need a separate resolution for improvements made to high schools, similar type improvements made to our high schools. As Trustee Walker pointed out, the age and condition of the majority of our elementary districts, we determined that the immediate need, was on the elementary side and not on the high school side. Not that there's not a need. I just want to be clear that I'm saying that. But that would come, if these are successful, that would come in a future bond measure campaign. We did not want to overwhelm the voters with 2 on the elementary side.
I get that.
And 1 on the high school.
Yes.
So that being said, the other project that we talked about possibly moving forward with there's lighting upgrades that have gone on at all high schools, all schools in the district, both elementary and high school. So Modesto High School has had the same lighting upgrades that other high schools either have had or will have. So that's all treated the same. We had to identify solar sites that were eligible for solar projects that could pay for themselves.
Which means the roofing had to be correct for the solar panels to go on.
Not necessarily. No, these are freestanding. These would be
Oh,
freestanding
okay.
shade structures in parking lots.
Okay.
So really, the key there is which parking lot is facing the right direction. That's not blocked by trees
I see.
or buildings or any other structures. So that's the main reason why those 3 school sites were picked. Now, that being said, the dollars that we save, the board has directed staff to add additional funds for high school facility improvements. So we now have a ongoing source of funds from the budget that they just approved that will provide necessary facility repairs or additions at high school sites on an as-needed basis. So we now have funds, and as was pointed out, I believe by Trustee Walker, this will free up other dollars that we've allocated to elementary schools that now can be freed up for other purposes or for high schools, in addition to what the board has already authorized.
Thank you for that explanation.
All right, any other questions from the public on this bond? All right, then it comes back to the board for comments or a vote.
And so what I would ask you to do on the parking structures, ma'am, if you'll Google Chabot College, if you go Google Chabot College, you'll see what they've done with their parking lot structures, and that's the solar setup that we're sort of looking at. And so that's was my mental image because we've done marching band competitions there. And it's actually pretty slick because you pull into the parking lot, you park under a structure, and the roof of that structure is the solar setup. And so that's a pretty cool local image of what it would look like. And so that's certainly where I went to go look and ask Johnson Controls, is this what we're talking about? And it's identical. And it's pretty slick, and all those sites are open, but that's the Google thing that I did.
Trustee Brown.
I guess I need to ask the same question. Does anyone have comments before I propose that we adopt the next resolution?
Go ahead and go for it. I think
Make that
that's
motion.
great. Okay, and Trustee Marks would like to second it, so she beat you to it this time, Trustee Lopez. So it's been moved and seconded by Trustee Brown and then by Trustee Marks. So if we could call a roll.
Trustee Brown?
Aye.
Trustee Lopez?
Aye.
Trustee Marks?
Aye.
Trustee Walker?
Aye.
Trustee West?
Aye.
Board President Newman?
Aye. And the motion and resolution passes unanimously. Woohoo! So we are on our way to the ballot in November. That is great. So let's go to the item B11, which is approval of or authority to enter into a memorandum of understanding with the City of Modesto related to additional support for district election services for the November 2018 general election. This I'd like to turn over to Superintendent Renquist.
The City of Modesto provides municipal election services to the Modesto City Schools. This can be in two different forms, sometimes in a trustee election and other times for a proposed charter amendment. We have asked and been working with the City of Modesto about a charter amendment for the November 18 ballot election. In communication with the City of Modesto, we were talking to them about providing additional staff support in the for preparation of this November 18 election. So we are currently, as administration, talking with the City of Modesto about a possible memorandum of understanding that would, the district would provide up to $50,000 to the City of Modesto. They would hire or provide services in trying to prepare for this November 18 election. At this time, we do not have an agreement, and so what we're asking the board to do tonight is to authorize the administration to continue working with the City of Modesto to come to an agreement with through an MOU, Memorandum of Understanding, and then to be able to execute that is time sensitive, and then bring that back for ratification at a future board meeting. So tonight we're asking the board to authorize administration to continue to work on the Memorandum of Understanding, agree to it, and then bring it back for ratification at a future meeting.
Great, thank you. Are there any comments from the board? Comments or questions, actually? All right, I just want to add that this is an effort to just really do our part and as a community partner with the city, recognizing the tight revenues that the city has at this time and that this does place an additional burden on their staff and for helping us handle our elections pursuant to the charter. So are there any questions of the public? No questions. All right, back to the board for a comment or in a vote. All right, Trustee Walker.
Can I just say thank you to the folks who have worked on this? Thank you, because it may not seem like a big deal, but it's quite a big deal. And I appreciate everybody's effort that you guys put into that and being proactive versus reactive.
Great. Thank you. All right, I'm looking for a motion. All right, it's been moved by Trustee Marks and seconded by Trustee Walker. And so this is just a general motion. So all those in favor, state aye.
Aye.
Aye. Then it passes unanimously. All right. All right. This is approval of. This is item B12. Approval of the resolution number 1718-27, adopting the education protection account for the fiscal year 2018-2019. And I'd like to turn the matter over to Superintendent Renquist.
Associate Superintendent Zerley is well rested, so he'll take this one also.
Thank you. This is a procedural resolution that is done at this meeting every year. First enacted or first required with the passage of Proposition 30. That was the temporary sales tax and personal income tax increases, and then extended in November of 2016 by Proposition 55. So the district must show that these dollars generated through the proposition are not being used for administrative costs. And so that is outlined in on page B12 of the agenda. We did not hire $38 million worth of new teachers. I mean, I just want to be clear on what we're doing here. This is just a procedure that we have to show how we're allocating the funds. This wasn't $38 million new to the district. This provided a funding source to the state of California to meet its Proposition 98 obligation. That's really what this was for. And in order for the voters to approve it, we have to show and certify that we're spending the dollars as intended, which is on either certificated instructional staff or classified instructional staff. So you can see how we've allocated in our budget to use these funds.
Are there any questions for Mr. Zierli? Just to clarify that this is something we do every year, right? Since the passing of Prop 30 originally, and then it was re-upped as Prop 55. So we have to make this finding every year?
Yes, at least through 2030 or until there's another proposition that would extend it past that point in time. So yes,
all
and
right.
it's once a year that we do this.
And this is the time we have to do it? We have to do it at this point, right after the budget?
With the budget adoption, yes.
Okay. All right, are there any other questions from staff, for staff? All right, to the board, to the public, are there any comments or questions? Seeing none, back to the board for approval. Do I hear a motion? I'll move. It's been moved by Trustee West and seconded by Trustee Brown. This is a resolution, so it's been moved and seconded. And would you call the roll, Superintendent Renquist?
Trustee Brown.
Aye.
Trustee Lopez.
Aye.
Trustee Marks.
Aye.
Trustee Walker.
Aye.
Trustee West.
Aye.
Board President Newman.
Aye. The resolution passes unanimously, and that takes us on to item B13. All right, we are zipping right through this. This is a board approval of the next steps in the appointment process to fill the vacancy arising from the resignation of board member Stephen Grembo. We've been given some information. So the first thing we need to do is we decided at the last board meeting to fill the vacancy via appointment. And so we made the applications available to the public from June 11th with the filing deadline of noon on June 22nd, 2018. And the interviews are to be held on June 26th and June 27th if needed. There were 11 applicants. And so the board needs to discuss now the process. So how we go about the process of interviewing and what we want to do, and then the questions that we would ask. So I handed you guys a kind of a brief memo that I did just to prepare for the meeting. And so the first question is, since we have 11 applicants, we've had the tradition since I think I've had to do 3 of these appointments. We generally always interview everybody who applies, but it's the board's discretion as to what to do on that. So I'd be looking for direction now as to whether we want to have a paper screen process or to interview everybody who applied. Trustee Marks.
So I'm fine if we interview everyone who applied. I just want to know if they were all okayed by the county clerk to see if they're all registered voters according to the law. That was the only thing. Okay, thank you.
Yes, and our board secretary, Chris Masters, is saying yes, since the video probably didn't catch that. Thank you. And so is there any input on interviewing them all, or what we want to do on that? Trustee Brown.
I think we need to interview them all.
Yes. I think, are we on board with that? I'm seeing nods of heads. Everybody thumbs up on that. All right, then we move right past that. We will interview all applicants. All right, so now the second question has been suggested by, we've normally done individual interviews where we allot a certain amount of time, and it's been suggested that we look at a panel type interview where we, as all of us up here, we've run for office, and so when we are interviewed by the League of Women Voters or the B, we have to sit in a panel type and have a few minutes each of us to answer a question, and that would be what I'm talking about in terms of a panel. So in terms of a configuration to just visualize it, it would be, we'd take out the podium and have all the applicants sitting around here. and then be interviewed by the board as we go through the panel. So that would be a panel. The individual interviews, most of us are familiar with that. I think that Trustee Walker, Trustee Brown have been applicants in that process, so you've seen it. So the only two who haven't seen it yet would be Trustee West and Trustee Lopez. But what we do on an interview, individual interview, is we schedule the interviews on the nights that we have the meeting. All of this is done in an open meeting, and we set aside a certain amount of minutes for each meeting, for each interview. So some feedback on what you guys think. Trustee Lopez.
I just have a question because I see that down here we have someone that's being.
We'll get to that question.
Right, but my point to that in regards to a panel versus individual. So I would say individual, but I'm open to hearing otherwise.
Okay. All right, individual. Mm-hmm.
I think my question, since I've never been a part of this, those of you who are experienced, what are your thoughts on it, individual versus panel? I would like to know that.
I think Trustee Marks can best address that because she brought up the idea.
So this will probably be my 8th or 9th interview process doing a candidate application process. And as I was just thinking about it again, I felt like it would be really interesting for us to hear all of the candidates answer the same question at the same time, rather than it would also save time because there isn't a gap between the candidates. We go straight through and answer the questions, and I thought maybe doing something where they would get like an introductory question. They could give us a little bit, information about themselves in 90 seconds, and then maybe at the end do a concluding sentence, when you interviewed too. So I was kind of thinking about how the League of Women Voters did it, and it just seemed like it ran really well. Everybody got the same, and they also got to hear each other's answers, which I think in some ways I thought might give an advantage going later in the interview process than doing it all at once. And so it was a thought that I thought Elle and I wanted to bring it up and see if we could do it together and set them out in a line and ask each one of the questions that we'd have.
Trustee Walker had some input on that.
I think that my thought process was the same because I've been on that side and I've been on this side. And I think the idea of a panel makes a lot more sense, one, for time reasons, but two, as you mentioned, I think it's easier to hear the answer to a question in a row. And so you're not sort of going ding, 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 and then you start back over and go down, 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 down. And so it comes across as a panel. I think moving forward, I think it's better to have everybody here than to have the debate we had during the last interview process where you had folks saying, do I leave the room? I don't have to leave the room. It's an open meeting. Do I stay? Because we can't say you have to leave. It's an open meeting. So rather than say push, pull, everybody at the table, roll through the questions. We'll get to hear everybody's answer sort of in sequence, and you'll get a better idea of keeping track in your mind what that answer is as you weigh it. And that's also, to your point, very similar to what you do when you're running for office. You're all sort of sitting there and you move through the process together. I think it's more like what you do in reality, and that's from the guy that didn't want to do this, and I'm trying to be a team player, right? So how's the best way to sort of skin this cat that's fair to everybody, that gives everybody the same shot?
Trustee Brown.
So I want to be sure that we're fair to all the candidates. And I do like the idea of hearing each question and being able to, in my mind, formulate my impression of the answers. So I think that is helpful. But my only concern is, has any information been given out to any of the candidates suggesting that they would be given a certain amount of time or if we ask them all to be open for the entire time?
No, what communication has been delivered is keep those nights open And we don't have questions for you yet because we had this board meeting to do that. So as I look out in the audience, I see many of the applicants, which because they probably want to know what the heck's going to happen. So I appreciate that, and you get to know what we do each time. So no, we haven't done anything yet, so no questions have been disseminated and no time allotment. Just keep Tuesday night open and possibly Wednesday night. And so from 5 to just a block of time from 5 to 8. I think one of the key points for me in terms of panel versus individual is we cannot make anybody leave the room. So if you are the last person to be interviewed, you can sit through every single interview. And I can't make you leave the room. And because this is an open board meeting, this is all an open process. This is a very transparent process. We're going to interview everybody, and so we want to make it as open as possible. So, the panel versus individual. Would you guys like to hear from the public on this, or we want to panel versus individual? Do you guys want to hear from them? So why don't we go to the public on the issue of panel versus individual? Anybody have any comments? Yes, Miss Mitchell. I'm sorry. Thank you. Hang on just a minute.
And it can be a very intimidating situation for someone who hasn't gone through that process before. And it may be easier on the end when they've heard everyone else's approach to dealing with the position, then it may be comfortable for the people who are bringing up the rear. However, I was wanting to know about scoring. Do you score the answers?
We'll be talking about scoring in a bit. This is really just panel or the question is panel or individual interviews, because we have to go through this kind of logically. So we have to pick that first, and the process first, and then we'll talk about scoring.
Mm-hmm.
So thank you. Any other questions?
Well, I would suggest panel.
Okay, thank you. Any other?
Oh, you want?
She's gonna come up to the mic. Yeah, it's up a little too high.
Hi, my name is Phyllis Ashton, and I have put in for the trustee position. I do have a question in regards to Mr. Lopez's question about if it's equal. Could we address that? Are you going to go from, start with 1 and go through 11? Or are you going to vary it so that the candidates have an equal shot? Seems like an easy position to me.
Yeah. I think that basically we're going to discuss whether panel or individual, and then we'll discuss all the process of it. So that's a good point. So we would go through that.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. So would you be in favor of panel or individual?
I'm open, but I think panel makes more sense.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Good evening.
Hi, I'm Patricia Gillum, but I'm really Pat Gillum, and I'm a candidate as well. I have been through the election process in other areas, and I think it's a fair way to do it. I think it addresses the time constraint and attempts to address I'm going to change my answer, which I don't think too many people really do. But I think in the way of being able to contrast, it's pretty hard for you to remember what number 1 said on an answer when you get to number 11, where this way I think you'll be able to make a better decision.
Great, thank you. Anyone else?
Hi, Ryan Chambers. I like the idea of the panel. I can see the other way having certain advantages too, but going through like the League of Women's Voters meetings, I felt like it's good that all the candidates speak about the same question at the same time, and the order can be varied so it's somewhat fair. It's not going to be perfectly fair, but no way it's going to be perfectly fair, and that way it'll be like a very organized, speedy process and may not require 2 nights. But ultimately, if it requires 2 nights to get the best candidate, then I think we should do that. But I don't think it needs to be a long, drawn-out process for 2 board meetings where we're not sure if all the candidates are going to have to show up again, whether they've spoken or not. And I just think it personally makes the most sense to have it as a panel, but I'm open to other ideas. Thank you.
Great. All right. Anyone else? Okay, back to the board. Okay, so yes, Trustee Brown.
So the only advantage that I see to the individual approach is that it takes some careful planning on the part of the individual to respond to all the questions within the allotted time. We take that element away. So the planning piece as to where you focus your attention is taken away from the candidates. But I see the advantage, and for me it's overriding advantage of the fairness and the ability to give a fair assessment with the panel.
Okay. Trustee Marks.
I agree. The timing of this, I did think about that because I do recall some people taking longer on certain ones and less time on others. But there's also planning involved in being more concise and fitting your comments into a shorter, briefer amount of time. And so it gives you an opportunity to make a lengthy answer that takes up the whole time that we decide on, or make it short and not say a lot. So, but I hear you because I thought about that too.
All right, so I'm hearing from you guys that we want to proceed with a panel. Is that what I'm thumbs up on a panel? Okay. Everybody is thumbs up on a panel. Okay. So then we need to go back to like E on the my little thing. So we're going with a panel. E down here is we do have one applicant who's asking to appear by phone. If we have a panel, it does make that very cumbersome for us and for the applicant. They wanted to either appear by Skype. We don't have the technology to Skype to do that at the meeting, but because we've checked into that. But we do have we could have them appear by phone. Where are we at on that? Trustee Walker.
So in the spirit of going and jumping off a limb here, I think in all honesty, if you're going to apply for the position, you need to be here. I think that having sat on that side of the table, I would expect that if somebody else applied to interview like I did, that you would be here. And I appreciate that it's summer, but I think relative to any job, if you've got an interview, you need to show up for the interview. And it may seem a bit harsh, but at some point you sort of got to slice this thing down and go, you need to be here. That's just my take, but I could be one.
Anyone else? Trustee Marks.
So I'm surprised we don't have the technology to Skype. Because I've Skyped in on phone call to do a board meeting before. Do we not?
We have, but Skype meaning video as well.
Right.
Is what they wanted, but I don't think we've done that. I think we've just done the telephone conference.
So Mr. Gaines is in the back, and he's set it up for me, so I could do Skype from.
What she's saying is it would not be the video. You would not be.
You don't want the video?
No, we would not have the person on the Skype on the video. Is that right?
It would be hard to get them on the video.
Okay.
I'm not speaking to the microphone, sorry. Okay. It would be hard for the individual to hear everybody else's responses and all of the board members. You would hear their response, and they would probably hear
the question.
Yeah. It might be possible. I'm not the world's expert on Skype. Does our other tech have any?
So I'll just make my other comment.
We would have to somehow pipe the microphones, and every applicant would have to have a microphone.
Okay.
Those microphones would then have to be piped into that computer so that that applicant could hear every response. So it would be fair. That's not something that is going to be easily set up.
Right. So here's just my opinion on that. If you're person who, let's just say they planned a trip overseas. Let's just say they went to Australia. I have no idea why they have to Skype, but let's just say they planned that. Then all of a sudden we've decided, oh, we're going to do this. They've already got a trip planned. They're gone. But if they're willing to do the work to listen and at least call in or at least hear the question and answer it, at least our point is that we want to hear their answer. It's nice to be able to see their face. That's the point of an interview. So that's why I like to do Skype instead of phone call, because you can tell some just by reaction when they speak. So if we could do Skype and only do it where at least they can hear and we can hear as a board what their answer is, then I would say, okay, if that technology is not available to be able to do that, then I'm not so much for just a phone call and a phone interview, because that's different to me than a Skype interview. So I have Zoom. I do a Zoom call every week with people, and so I see them all over the United States, and we do this with 9 people. So and that technology is, I know, very inexpensive, but if we choose to do this, I'd prefer that we would do it by Skype or a place where we can see them.
But what Mr. Gain is mentioning is that, for those of you who couldn't hear, is that the person who is interviewing would not be able to hear all the other answers. So it puts them at the other people in the panel would hear the answers. Right. So it would put them at a disadvantage. And that, as long as we recognize that, and
if they recognize that as well,
and if they still want to pursue it, that would be up to them. Is that what you're?
That's what I'm saying. If they're okay with not being able to hear the answers, I'm okay with that. They would basically be doing an interview by themselves, but that's up to them.
Okay.
They would also need, excuse me, they would also need to be on the Skype technology from 5 to 8, like everyone else, correct? They're not just calling in. And
They'd have to be available during the entire 3 hours. Yes.
Yep.
So, so if they did get dropped, that would be, that would be unfortunate.
But that can happen. So
that
that's
can
the
happen.
Technology. So I'm willing to do it. I'm not saying it. I mean, it's not the most convenient for anyone in this, but I'm willing to try it. Never done that before, but it would be a new process, and who knows? But it's up to the rest of you. I'm just one person.
Why don't we because then we're going to go through the process, but we need to get over this first because it might change the process. So, Trustee Brown.
So are you looking for input to decide whether or not
Yes.
we're going to allow remote interviewing?
Yes.
I think in the interest of fairness, we should definitely consider it. I agree that it's not the best. Doesn't provide the face-to-face that Cindy's looking for, and I understand John's input, but I think that we need to give all those who have asked to be interviewed the opportunity to do so, and use the best that we have available. It sounds to me like that's telephone, and it's not going to be perfect, but we're doing the best we can.
Yes, Ms. Masters.
Does the candidate have to post the agenda where they are? Like when
they're not a board member at that point, so I don't think so, because it's the board members. If one of us had to be gone, I think that's the case. But being that they're just appearing, because otherwise that's a problem.
So I have another consideration, and this is the opposite. So if we do this, does it set a precedent? And do we have to do it next time?
I think that would be up to the board.
Okay.
So, yes, Trustee West.
I just think it's going to be difficult to have a fair assessment when we have 10 people face-to-face and one person on the phone. For me, it's going to make it very, very difficult to give the same value when it's by phone. That's my opinion.
So, all right, let's go ahead and let's take it to the vote. So, all those in favor of I guess we could go to the public on the just the narrow issue of phone or not, remote or no. Does anyone have any comment from the public on that? All right, Ms. Mitchell.
I'd say no.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else?
I'd have to agree with
Okay, there's 2 no's, and for the public, anyone else? Yeah, that's a good point. All right, anyone? Yes, Ms. Williams? Okay. All right. So I'm gonna. Any more comments? All right. Here's what I'm gonna suggest that we. So what the issue would be is we leave it up to we would open it up to the applicant being able to make this decision, because this puts them in a disadvantage. So they can decide whether they don't want to do it or not, but that they need to be available from 5 to 8. They need to be available on phone. We don't know whether the Skype thing will work. But available by phone for the 3 hours, and then that would be who's in favor of that?
I would also add that we're not going to delay the process for a disconnect.
No, that's right. And so there's 3 conditions. Okay, available by phone the whole 3 hours.
Skype.
Available by phone or Skype by 3 hours. And then it would no delay because of disconnect, and then also that they agree that they understand that this is their decision and what they want to do. They understand the disadvantage. Okay. And the applicant who wants this, they're not in the audience, are they? I don't see them. Okay. Okay, so who is in favor of these 3 conditions and allowing them to appear by phone? Thumbs up. Okay, so we've got, oh yeah, we'll unanimously allow that. Okay, good deal. So, all right, so we have the 3 conditions. All right, so we are booking it through so, all right, so again, we're back at the panel. So we'll have our gentleman on the phone, and then we'll have 10 people sitting along here, and I might have like an extra table if we could, like, so just to do some some planning. So we might have an extra table so cabinet still has room. Maybe we'll move Mark up and just so we still have room. Yeah. So we'll just move you guys over so that you guys are still present, and then and maybe have the tables move backwards. So that, does everybody like that? The reorganizing? So, yes.
We have some people going on vacation, so I will be here tomorrow night. I'm not sure about the other cabinets. I'm not sure that we're going to need to necessarily plan for everyone so we can make it work. With taking these tables and flipping them around, both of them, and making it longer to get all
that
the
would be great.
10 people.
Would that work?
And yeah, I think if we flip these 2 tables around, move the podium back, that would give us sufficient seating.
Sufficient seating. All right, everybody like that?
I just wanted to line. Yep.
Okay, we're all good with that. Okay, so then my idea would be to draw the name of who would go for the first question, so that would not be like, okay, we're going to start with you on there. It would be totally random. So we draw the name. Is everybody good with that? We draw the name, and we proceed with the applicant to the right, our right, and then have each applicant answer the question and go through the panel. My thought is that we'd keep a time limit for the questions, and my thought, I'm going to throw out the time limit of 3 minutes. And we would have just a few questions for this initial panel, is my thought, and then that gives us 110 minutes, and then we just and then go from there. What do you, Trustee Marks?
I was actually going to suggest 90 seconds. Because a minute and a half you can do very well. 2 minutes is definitely plenty of time. If anybody who's done Toastmasters, you have 2 minutes to do the impromptu question. 2 minutes is a long time when you're answering some questions. There might be some that we say maybe we want to extend it for one that we know might have a longer answer. But I think 2 minutes max.
Okay.
I'd say a minute and a half is what I suggest. I've had to do a panel where we had a minute to answer the questions, and there were only 3 of us, but it still took a while because they had like 20 questions. It took more than a minute to ask one of the questions. But I believe that a minute and a half to 2 minutes per question should be fine.
So one of the things that I was thinking about as we looked at this was maybe to have a full panel, and then to have just a limited number of questions for the full panel, give them a few more minutes, and then to have a process of eliminating some of the people in the panel, and then coming back Wednesday night with some finalists, and then going through more questions and doing it that way. It extends the process, or whatever you guys want to do. So weigh in.
Okay, so I'm the guy that, besides Trustee Brown over here, who's been over there and gone through this, and I appreciate the 90-second thing. You got to be up here for a minute to do 90 seconds. I think it's tough to answer a question in 90 seconds. Have you been over there?
2 minutes.
Okay. Oh, yeah, understand being over there and having not done this before. I have no doubt we've got a couple of folks out here who've sort of been through this before, but I think you got folks that haven't. And I think I'm also trying to get a good answer to decide for me to try to decide who is that best person. And I'm going to need a bit more than 90 seconds. And the second piece of what Trustee Newman just said is that if we do this in a manner that says we start with 11, and the goal is to end up with a list of finalists, what that number may be, and then come back the second night and then do a second round and say, okay, here's our list of 3, 4, whatever we decide. You guys, we're going to go dig deeper now. And then take those finalists and end up with a final number. If that's the process, then we could run the 2 hours, divide 2 hours by the number and give them the... I need a bit more than 90 seconds, I think. I just do.
All right. Trustee Marks?
Okay. I mean, so make it 2 minutes. Have you done League of Women Voters? Theirs are always 2 minutes or less. Maybe
When I came in to interview for this position, I'd never done anything like that in my life. And don't get me wrong, it's not like they chose me. Love y'all. But the point was it was different. And there is, like you mentioned, there's a certain level of stress there just because it is what it is. And you're sitting in front of 7 people, 6 people, and they're shooting you questions, and now you're sitting next to 10 other people, and let's give a little room for humanity here. It's a difficult bit.
2 minutes. I'm still sticking
You've
with
been
2
here
minutes.
for 20 years. Throw me a bone here.
Hey, I've done a bunch of these. I've done 6 of them.
Roger, but I'm talking about being on the other end. I guess I'm arguing for the candidates at this point.
No, as a candidate, I've done it 6 times. So I'm just saying that it helps, and I can hear what you're saying, but I also believe that we can do it in a more concise way.
I will do what I did last time. Y'all figured out. If you're all on the same page, I'm with you.
Okay. All right. Trustee Brown.
So I think 2 minutes, and there may be some questions that don't need that amount of time. But I'm all for trying to get this process completed in a single day.
Ooh, yeah.
I realize it's going to be tough, but you know, especially if we do a process of elimination, I think it's very workable. It's going to be difficult for me to make it in 2 days.
Okay, so if we did 2 minutes, are you saying, you just said a process of elimination, so you were talking about keeping the whole panel in and then start the eliminating process and the selection process? So instead of reducing the panel, having more questions and going that way. Okay, that sounds fine. I would agree. I'm trying to, I came up with alternatives just because I thought it was a way to maybe just have a fluid discussion on this. Trustee Lopez.
No, I was just going to say that I was in agreement with Mr. Walker. I think that they need the full 3 minutes. But
Okay. Then we need to probably limit it down to maybe 4 or 5 questions. I'm on the side of two minutes, but Trustee West wants to weigh in.
How about this? I was thinking we have 9 questions here. If we
Well, these are not decided. This
Oh.
was what we used last time, and this was just a place to go, but these are probably not 2-minute question answer.
So let's imagine we have 9 questions, and we take 4 questions for the first initial round of 2 minutes.
Yes.
Then we narrow down the process, and then with the however many we decide, then we have 5 questions, or vice versa, and we go more in depth in those questions.
That gets us to 2 nights. That's what I initially worked out. Am I right, Trustee Walker?
Four questions at 2 minutes apiece. 4, 2, 8 times 10 is 80 minutes.
No, 11.
11.
88. So that's an hour and a half.
So an hour and a half.
We have 3 hours allotted.
So we got an hour and a half there.
And then we're going to take a half-hour deliberation.
Come back with, like you said, 5-minute questions, 2, 3 of them. I don't know. I'm just trying to get in agreement with y'all. Remember, I wanted to throw this to the voters. So I like what you're saying because I think I'm trying to get a feel.
It's not.
I'm trying to get a feel for who we're talking to, because I know a few faces, but that doesn't mean I know everybody. And so I'm working sort of through 2 lenses here. I keep saying the lens of having sat out there and the lens of having sat up here. And now this is the 3rd time, so the more transfer. I'm looking for a smooth process that everybody's happy with.
So, so if we did 2 minutes, and we decided on 5 questions, let's say 5 questions with 11 people, that's, yeah, 110. And so that gets us, and then we would go to deliberate, and because the 110 is like really tight, because when we go to each one,
Nobody goes over.
yeah, and we go to each one, so then we deliberate, and that gets us done in one evening. Or we do 6 questions, and then maybe that's maybe a little bit, 2 minutes, 6 questions, and.
But then we don't go.
Does that bring us to 2 nights, though?
No,
Not.
I don't think
The
so.
assumption is you're not going to a second round now.
Right.
The assumption here is if you're going on the model that
Then
you're
we
talking
dismiss
about.
the panel, and then we do deliberation, and then okay.
We come back
Okay.
and we go from
So-
11 to 1.
So the next part of the discussion is then on scoring and then the questions. So there's 2 minutes. Okay, Trustee Brown.
I'm trying to make sure that I understand what your process is. You're saying 5 or 6 questions, and then we do our deliberations,
And we make a decision.
and we
tomorrow
make a
night.
decision.
Yeah.
So
I'm leaning towards 6 because I think we can do that, but. Yeah.
At 2 minutes a pop, right? So we're saying you got 2 minutes.
So do we leave it open then to? We're 6. We don't have a tiebreaker on this group. If we have 2 candidates that emerge,
That's going to be scoring next. We haven't gotten to
Okay.
that. Just a minute.
I'm just thinking that if we have finalists and we have maybe one final question that we want to ask, however many finalists, that's not going to take as much time as the first round.
So we have.
So
but then
I
we have
think
to
there's
have
room
the-
for us to have a second round with a group of finalists
Okay,
and have
so-
that all in the same evening.
So 2 minutes, 2 minutes responses. That would be 5 questions with 11 people. That gets us to 110.
It's 2 hours.
And then we do elimination. We narrow it down to the top 3. So then we narrow it down to the top 3, and then we have one more question,
Or 2.
1 or 2 questions, and with the top 3, and then we make a decision. Okay, how's that? That's all on one night. I think that probably we're going to be limited to 1 question.
Yep.
Maybe 1 and a follow-up.
Right.
Okay.
1 in a summary.
Yeah, 1 and a summary. Yeah, let's do that.
Are we going to do any introduction and a summary or no? Or one of these questions could be?
Well, we haven't talked about the questions. Superintendent Renquist.
I just wanted to make sure that we're keeping in mind that their transition time.
Yes.
When you're answering a question that's asked.
Yes.
And that takes time. When someone finishes an answer, the next one doesn't automatically pick up right where that is. And so as you're figuring out the number of questions you're going to be asking, you do have to realize that there's going to be, for lack of a better way, dead time in between one answer and the next answer.
So there's 2 minutes, 5 questions with some dead time built in. I'm thinking about 30 minutes of dead time. Well,
Go
actually,
4 questions. Pull out
2
one
minutes, 2 minutes, 5 questions with the dead time of about 30 minutes. So that's plus 30. That's 1 hour and 40 minutes. Wait, 140 minutes. As 2 hours and 20 minutes.
And we come back for another hour.
Yeah.
I think you got to go to 4 questions, not 5.
I think we have to go to 4. You're right, because if we're going to ask a final question of the top 3.
But if you do them at a minute and a half, you won't have to do that.
Whatever y'all decide. I'm just
Okay.
trying to be on the team here.
But you don't have to repeat the
Let's do
question 10
4
times.
questions.
That'll save time too.
2 minutes, 4 questions, and then 2 minutes, 4 questions. Then we pick the top 3. Then we have one final question, and for the top 3, and then we make a decision. How's that? Okay, thumbs up for that.
I think I'm okay with it.
All right, thumbs up. All right, we are unanimous. Okay, so 2 minutes, 4 questions. Then we do a top 3, and then we have one last question. All right, that takes us to the questions. Well, that takes us to scoring. Okay, so this is how we would. Okay, the board. Okay. So when we finish with the 4 questions, then we would dismiss the panel into the audience and deliberate here and pick the top 3. So what we do is have each of the board members select 3, and it would be a verbal vote because this is all a public meeting. So everybody would have to say, okay, Chad, who are your top 3? Who are your top 3? And you would name them, not necessarily in any order. And then Chrissy would keep track of it over there. We'd have a list of all the names, and we'd have slash marks and points for each person that gets in somebody's top 3. What do you guys think? Trustee Marks.
So I'm just going to throw this out there. When we named a school, we did it on a sheet of paper, and we each put a name on it. That way, what it does is it doesn't influence the vote of the people down the table. So I believe that some of our votes on the last time that we did this, the votes might have turned out differently had we done it as my number 1 candidate, my number 2 candidate, and gone down the line and then read out, these are number 1, number 2. We can put our names on it if you choose. That's fine with me. The only thing I felt is that it does influence as you go down the line. So I would like to see it be more of a free vote and then still be able to put it up on the board.
Okay, well then let's all have our vote on a sheet of paper, but we identify who the vote is. I think that's probably necessary.
I would prefer that we not do a ranking with the first.
Right. Yes.
Thank you.
I do not want a ranking
that's
on the
fine.
first.
Oh,
yes.
that's fine. That's fine.
That's what I was suggesting. No ranking on the first round.
Yeah.
And then we just list our top 3 in no particular order. We'll put it on a sheet of paper. You put who the board member is. So Chad's gonna write Chad, and he's gonna have his 3 people.
Okay.
And Adolfo's gonna write Adolfo, and you're gonna have your 3 people. And it's not in any order. It's just 3 names on there. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. And spelled correctly.
That's right.
No, and
So-
I think that's important because I think that'll get around the problem we had the last time.
Yeah. I think
Because I've only been on this side of it once, and I thought that at the end of it, I was confused in the beginning, I was confused in the middle, and I was confused at the end.
Yep.
And
Okay.
And so I like that point is it's on paper, no order.
So, all right. So this, the scoring we've already talked about that. And then Chris is going to keep track of that. Who gets that? The candidates with the most points advances to the finals. So we'd invite the 3 who have the most to come up here. Now, we have more than 3? Yes, thought about that. So that is a possibility because when I worked through the scenario with Chris and I on the phone today, where we just randomly voted, it was, we came up with 4 that had the exact same amount. So at that point, we can either decide to have 4 and then that was that, or we could have a second vote where we do rank them. So we could then eliminate some. So if we end up at 6 people, each one of us has picked a different person, then that would be a problem. But I think the possibility of 4 is still there. So we could have 3 to 4 finalists. Is that okay with everyone? Okay. Then they'll come back. We'll do the same thing again. We'll pick a name out, and that'll be the first person for the last question. Okay? And then we'll go to the right. And if it's the last person on this side, then it'll jump over here and go that way. Okay.
I think we should just put their names in a drawing and draw a name and then go down the line and then draw a name again so that because there's only 4 questions. If you had one for each one, that would mean only 4 people are going to end up being first. So if you knew you were going to be the next one, I don't know. I just was trying to do it where it would be a random first
It's
call.
totally, it's the second time, there's 4
Right.
people.
Okay.
So, and one question, so we should pick them random.
Okay.
Okay. So, okay, then, all right, so now we've got to the scoring. The scoring then for the final would be each board member would then rank their choice, would have the top choice, and if no clear winner, then the board would vote again, and we would just keep voting until we pick a winner. And so between 2 candidates. So, and we've done that before.
And so this is the golf score model, lowest score wins? So that we're clear before we get here tomorrow?
Well, no, the highest score wins on the
Well, if you're going 1, 2,
the
3.
on the first round of scoring, because they get the
Correct, I'm talking about the finals.
But the final, it's like golf. Yes, the lowest score wins.
Just looking for clarity.
Okay, because if one candidate gets 3 number 1s and then another candidate gets 3 number 1s, then we'll have to have another vote on that. So, yeah.
So just what you said there, 3 number 1s and 3 number 1s.
Yes, that could happen.
So just to clarify, that final vote, you're just looking at number 1s. You're not going to look at all 3 votes for people?
And then, yeah, we would look for 1, 2, and 3.
Okay. So
and then we would have it. Then we would have to be able to rank them 1 and 2, and then have another vote.
So when we look at the ballot, we're going to look at how many number 1s, period,
many
not
number
how
2.
many total points they had from the 6 trustees.
Yeah. But the final vote.
We're talking about the second round.
Yeah, the second round.
But I'm talking about the first round of the second evaluation.
Put your mic on.
Sorry. So once we get to that final selection, if we have a tie, then we need a way to break that tie.
Uh-huh.
So I would say that our 1, 2, and 3 ranking would play into that.
Right.
So this is that confusion thing.
Yes.
This is what I got you, because if you're going to go 1, 2, 3, so you can give a person 1 point, 2 points, 3 points, tally them up, lowest score, golf score wins. And this is where I got confused the last time. And so I want to be careful here because I didn't.
So that's in the second final round, that with the lowest score wins the golf thing. So are we good?
So first we look at all our number 1s only, and then we
If
go
y'all are
back.
good, I'm good.
Well, yeah, we probably would just do rank yours 1 to 3, but rank the candidates 1 to 3. And then that way we'd have just one vote on that, and then we'd take the scoring and then see where it is, and then we'd have the final vote. So what I'd like to do is what we usually do is when they see there's a apparent winner, we usually like to vote in that person as unanimous. So, okay. So now that takes us to questions. All right. So this is so much fun. So let's go to the questions. Now, with this previous sheet, you'll find it in your folder. This is what we used last time, and we had points. These points were really for your own purposes, and we could keep that on there or not. So the first question is, if you received a parent complaint about a teacher, how would you proceed? So is that a question we want to keep or get rid of?
I would argue since we're only doing 4, why don't we toss this and sort of get to the meat of the issue? I'm not sure that, I would rather see us talk questions about LCAP, budget, academic achievement, board, the sort of the things that we're discussing here. Tonight we did board policy, LCAP, which is academics. We did budget. That's sort of what we do up here. I'd like to sort of focus it on that if it's possible.
So why don't we start with number 2, that question for everybody? All right, so let's keep number 2. What is your understanding of the LCAP? Okay. All right. Any other? We've got to pick 4 questions. So, okay. So number 2. And then I like number 5 because I think it gets her in thinking.
It's relevant.
Do you think our schools are safe? Why? Yeah.
Come up to the microphone. Gladys.
I think you should do that privately. If
No,
your
we
question-
can't, Ms. Williams. We cannot. We have to do everything out in open. We cannot discuss anything as a board.
In private.
This is not confidential. Yes, wouldn't that be great?
Well, that sure puts some people at an odd obstacle because these guys that are here are going to know what the questions are, so they can go home, do
And
research
prepare.
and whatever else, and prepare.
Yes.
So it doesn't become an equitable system for selecting like this.
I can't help that. That's the law. Yes, Mr. Brown.
It
Well,
seems though that
I'm
we
going
need.
home. Good night.
I know. Thank you, Gladys.
Not just on the internet, just as every other candidate could as well.
It seems that we need to make, if we're discussing these questions tonight, we need to make them available as soon as possible to all candidates.
Just goes out an email first thing in the morning, right?
We'll discuss that.
We've got to tell them what the time frame is and to come and prepare to be here for the whole time.
We can provide them with the questions or not. In the past, when we provided them with the questions, people came in and read the answers. So that was something people fed back to me that they didn't like. So let's see.
So can we, all right, so it is an open process.
Yes.
And we do have the questions. We have the questions, but do we need to read them out? We read 2 out.
We only got 2 on the list now.
So do we need to read them all out? I don't see why we have to.
Well, that
never
would
thought
mean
about
that would mean that we're not going to be releasing them, so they wouldn't have any.
Right. That's what I'm saying. So
I think they need to be released.
I think.
I
that
actually think so. When you're in a candidate interview when we run, they're not released. You get the questions cold
Yep.
turkey. So
that's
I'm
the way
just
it
saying
goes.
you either know the information or you don't. You either studied or you didn't.
I'm looking for good answers. Give them the questions. Again, I'm looking at this from having sat over there.
Okay, me too. I am too. I've sat on both sides.
So what are we at on this? I think there's people out there want to weigh in on it.
Let's do half that are questions that we already know and half that aren't.
Okay.
Trustee West.
What is required? I mean, we need to do what's legal. So legally, do we have to read the questions out or not? I agree with Mrs. Williams that it doesn't make sense that some people know them ahead of time and others don't, but we need to follow the law. So I don't know what that is.
We have to discuss what we're going to ask them, and at a board meeting, we don't have a lot of time tomorrow night, so we can't decide tomorrow night while they're all here. So we'd have to decide that tonight. And so whether we release it to everybody, we could go ahead and release the questions to everybody tomorrow morning and then put everybody on equal footing. But there's some people who sat here tonight and through the meeting, and that means that
They were proactive.
they were proactive. So trustee, we'll maybe come out to the public in a minute. Trustee Brown.
I may suggest a question that's not on our list, so
Sure.
keeping it confidential by number is not going to help the process.
No, I assumed that people
Oh.
coming to the meeting tonight would learn the questions.
And
Or watching the meeting tonight.
And my assumption is that we would be putting it out there and make it available to them. However, we can send them a
Well, that's a
we put it-
different issue. So the people that come tonight are going to learn the questions, but that's a different issue. We'll need to discuss that as a board.
Okay.
So let's go through the questions first. So the people tonight are going to get the full view of the questions, and then we'll decide what to do from there. So, okay, number 2 we have on there. Do we need a quick break? Because we are missing a member. Can we do a 5-minute? I don't like to proceed without a member. So can we do a 5-minute? All right, so we'll break just for 5 minutes.
It's back.
Yeah. let's keep going tonight. Okay, so we're back on the potential questions, and Trustee Brown had a question to add. Okay. Okay, so I wanted to add number 5. Do you think our schools are safe? Why? I think it's just an important general question, and I'd like to get a flavor for where people are at. Anyone in agreement? Okay.
I'd like number 7.
Okay.
I like number 8.
I like number 9.
Okay, can we do, where's the one about the vision? Can you put the vision one towards that second round? That seems like a good closer.
Yeah, let's just decide on questions that we like off the list, and then we can pick where it is. 'Cause
Okay.
I agree with you that number 7 should be a closer.
I see number 9 as a closer as well.
Anything else you'd like to add?
Yeah.
Well, that's the summary statement we talked about giving them.
Yeah.
So there you go.
Okay, Trustee Lopez, did you have something else?
No, I just said that I liked question number 8.
What about this was a question that number 8 came from our student representative at that point when we did it, and it was an interesting question when it was asked. People didn't really understand it. So it was one of those that didn't really go. It didn't get us it was one of those I was going to suggest we delete. But I hear you. We've tried this question before and it didn't work.
You swap it out for 6?
Yeah, I think 6 is a good one. Do we want 6? Okay, so I've got 4 questions, 2, 5, 7, and 6, and we'll read all these aloud. Okay, so number 5 is, do you think our schools are safe? Why? Number 7 is, what is your vision for the future of Modesto City Schools? And number 6 is, what is your favorite thing about Modesto City Schools? If you could change one thing about the schools in Modesto City Schools District, what would it be? That's a long question, so I think it should be, maybe that's the closer question. And then maybe the 7, we would hear that. So this is a closer question. And so we need one more, and maybe it would just be the introductory. Introduce yourself to us.
So one thing that would be interesting to me, and I don't know if we can even ask this because it's an open seat.
Do you plan on running?
Don't go there.
Don't go there.
Yeah, well, I'm going to throw it out, and I may just be shut down that it's not something that we can even ask. But I would like to ask what voter district they live in. Can we ask
We
that?
can look at that on a map and determine that without asking.
Okay.
So, Trustee West.
So maybe the first question for all the candidates would be,
Tell us
why
about
are
yourself.
why are you interested in
Yeah.
why do you want to do this?
Yeah, yeah.
And that'll
Why?
be, yeah.
I like that. Why are you
Here.
interested in serving on Modesto City School Board as a trustee? Okay. All right, so that's the number 1 question. And then number 6 would be our closer for the one thing. All right. I think we're good. So that makes so the first question is, why are you interested in serving on Modesto City School Board as a trustee? And then does anyone have a problem with the next question being, what is your understanding of the LCAP? And then number 5, do you think our schools are safe? Why? And number 7, what is your vision for the future of Modesto City Schools? And then for the finalists, we have question number 6. What is your favorite thing about Modesto City Schools? If you could change one thing about the schools in Modesto City Schools District, what would it be? Yes.
The first question, why are you interested in serving? is
On-
similar to the candidate statement that we have on the applications, that I seek appointment to the Modesto City Schools Board of Education because.
Mhm.
So you might have that answer already.
So she's right. So do we want to, we've asked a little bit about, maybe should it be a more general question? Yeah, Trustee Lopez?
I don't know. You guys can help me out with this one, but I want to see something around the budget. Maybe like what are the priorities in the budget? Or
Amen.
Okay, so we would start with what is your understanding of LCAP, and then let's say what, so let's come up with our questions. So, well, what is your understanding of LCAP? What about number 3? What are your thoughts and ideas about district facilities and availability of technology at our school sites? What about your thoughts and ideas about district facilities and balancing and various budget issues?
Okay.
Instead, take out the technology.
Amen.
And then, because then we kind of get,
So how would it read?
it would read like this. What are your thoughts and ideas about district facilities and various budget issues?
Woosha.
What do you guys think?
I like
No? Too broad?
Instead of and various budget issues, and how would you prioritize?
How would you prioritize district facility needs and various budget issues?
You're only giving them 2 minutes.
I know. I think we
Easy.
need to go narrower.
I would leave out the district facilities, and I would just see what would be your priorities for budget.
Oh, okay.
That works because then you will get a feel for where their head's at.
I think that's better. Good job. All right.
So,
We're just having them rank their top 3 priorities.
No, I want to hear some feedback.
Don't
Okay,
don't
how
mess
would you
with Trustee Lopez over
prioritize
there.
budget priorities? Okay. So how would you prioritize budget priorities? Or budget, there's too many priorities.
How would you prioritize various budget issues?
Very,
Thank you.
various budget issues.
That's
Okay,
a
I'll read it
surprise one.
again.
That's good.
Okay.
No, so I said, how would you prioritize various budget issues? Sorry.
I like it because it gets to the insight.
Yeah. Okay, so
one more, just to piggyback on the statement that Chris gave us. I think it behooves us to make sure that each of us read the candidate statements ahead of time.
Oh, yeah.
And
got it.
Been there, done that.
And keep that in mind with the ranking process.
So, all right, so where would this budget question be in the order of questions? So would we begin with it? How would you prioritize various budget issues? And then what is your understanding of LCAP? Do you think our schools are safe? Do you want to do it that?
I put LCAP first.
LCAP, budget. Okay.
LCAP, budget, safety. Vision's on the second round, right? No, vision's last. And then the
Visions.
closer.
And the closer's number 6. Okay. So the first question would be, what is your understanding of the LCAP? Second question would be, how would you prioritize various budget issues? And the third question would be, do you think our schools are safe? And why? And then, what is your vision for the future of Modesto City Schools? And then the closer question, what is your favorite thing about Modesto City Schools? If you could change one thing about the schools in Modesto City School District, what would it be? All right, so that takes care of the questions. And then we need to answer Chad's issue, which is, do we deliver these questions to do we email them or have them available to people?
Yeah, I think you need to email these out because I just think it's the right thing to do. If I was on the receiving end, I'd want to know.
Okay. And Trustee Walker's weighed in. Trustee Brown?
Yeah, I think we need to even the score going in, make sure that no one feels that they've been disadvantaged by not knowing the information. So I think we email them the information and possibly follow up with a phone call. So they've got 2 separate media to.
Do you have emails on all these people?
It doesn't appear that we do.
I'm looking at that thinking the same thing.
I
so
see phone numbers.
So we could make it available. We could call them and tell them it's available at district office. They could come by and pick it up, or
We could
give us
post
your
it.
email.
Could we post it on the website?
No, we just call them and if they could and put the onus on them to come get it or give us your email. How's that?
If there's one sort of caveat here, if this is worth anything, we've only made up one new question, correct?
Right.
Everything else came off this list. I asked, and Jim put it up. The interview process from the last time we did this was reposted onto the school board website a week and a half ago. And so if you went and looked for the last interview process, proactive versus reactive, then you've already seen these questions asked, and we've only added one new question. And so we can get this out to people, but I think the fact that I did ask Jim, and he did do that for me because I had some folks ask me, that we did post up the last interview process so they could see what that looked like and see what those questions were. And so we've worked off that list, and we've only added one new one, and I don't think it's a big one. How do you do your budget thing? Everything else came off this list. And so we can get it out to them, but I think the information was available and has been for about 10 or 12 days.
So, all right. So should we go to the public? All right, we'll go to the public. So we get a comments, and then we'll vote on that issue. Mr. Chambers.
Hi, Ryan Chambers. I'm wondering what's going to be the question for the top three. I was kind of confused.
That's number 6. What is your favorite thing about Modesto City Schools? If you could change one thing about the schools in Modesto City Schools districts, what would it be?
Okay, I thought that was the 5th. So can you read the first through 6 questions again?
There's only going to be 4 questions for the whole panel.
Plus 1.
Okay, so it's going to be...
So you could get an email copy of this tomorrow. So why don't you give your email to Miss Mastras, and then that way you could get an email copy of it tomorrow.
Okay, so the 5th one, the top 3 is going to be the last question, the favorite thing one?
Yes.
Okay, yeah. I got it. Thank
So
you.
you got 2, 5, 7. We chose question number 2 in a minute, potentially. 2, 5, and 7. 6 will go to the final round, and we added 1 on budget priorities. Essentially is where we're at, if I've got this summarized.
Any other questions from the public?
But I don't know. I guess I'm...
Okay, any other questions from the public? All right, yes, come on up.
Just to be fair, when I received the packet, it did say here that all candidates will be provided with a list of written questions which the board will ask during the interviews.
Okay, so we'll provide that tomorrow.
It should be available to the person on the phone. It should be
right.
Transparency.
We'll make it available by email tomorrow. So if you want to get if those of you who are candidates here, if you can get your emails to Miss Mastras, that would save her a phone call tomorrow morning. Because I think I see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 people, 6 people that are candidates in the audience. So so if you guys want to do that, that'd be great. And I apologize. I'd forgotten that was in the letter. So thank you. Mm-hmm. Okay. Anyone else want to weigh in? All right. Then let's come back and let's approve these. Are we good on these questions? All thumbs up? Thumbs up on the questions. All right. There's one last issue that just in terms of scoring, so we don't have an issue tomorrow. That when we do the scoring for the final, and this is, thank you, Superintendent Renquist, for bringing this up. So when we do the scoring for the finalist tomorrow, then we are truly decided on a true golf score, because that would mean that it would be the lowest score. So if somebody gets 1, 1, 1, 3, 3, 3, then if somebody gets a 1, 2, 2, what is the other one?
It was 2 1s and 4 2s.
Yeah. And then they would the one with 2 1s and 4 2s would beat the other one. Is that what you understand, Trustee Marks?
I did, but I recall my husband on one of the occasions that helped make it clear was that if we rank them differently, if we rank them 3 as the top, and then you do the top number score, then it actually gives you a more fair ranking.
So we assign a value to number one.
So you might have, since you are also math whiz, do you have a comment on that?
So this is what happened
He does
last.
have a comment. Hang on.
Yeah,
before I go any further, he might be right and I might be wrong, but
Superintendent Renquist.
I think whether we give 3 points to the number one candidate or 1 point to the number one candidate, it's all going to play out the same. My example is that it is possible for someone to be the number one candidate, whether it's 1 point or 3 points on 3 different people's scorecard. Right. But based upon how the other rankings go, they may not end up to be the number one, the lowest score or the highest score, no matter how we do it. And that was the example. That a person who had 3 1s and 3 3s would end up with 12 points, and a person with 2 1s and 4 2s would end up with 10 points.
So are we okay with the lowest score? That would still win. And so then the example we gave of 4 2s and 2 1s, that person would be that would be the lowest score. They would have 10, and the person that had 3 1s and 3 3s would have 12.
So what I would do is I would tell them at that point, I would say, all right, if we had 2 people, then I would say you got to rank these 2. You only get 2.
Yeah, if we did it with 3, then I would make it. I'd revote it down to 2. That's where I think it would go to.
Sometimes it makes the person come up to the top that most people will agree on, and that's your goal. Our goal is to find someone that the most
Everybody
of us
votes
agree
one on. Yes,
and we want to have the candidate that we all would like to. We'd really like to have working in this environment and helping us make decisions.
So let me go back.
So okay.
I had originally suggested that we, on our second round, look first only at the number ones. And if we have a majority of number ones.
Sure, then it's decided. But
and it's decided.
but if it isn't, then that's why we have to plan for this.
And then we do a second round, which is the golf score, the lowest point.
Right, and then if it's a weird result like this, then let's go to eliminate it down to 2. And then we'll do the final vote will be between 2 people, two, unless it's clear from the first vote. Okay. Okay.
So it's the number of ones would be the first cut. The second cut is the golf score, and if it's still a mess, we would narrow it down to 2.
Yep.
Got it.
All right, then.
You're not gonna be here.
Yeah, he is.
Oh, you will. Okay.
Okay. This is gonna be the fun last meeting. So all right, this takes us to the last 2 items on agenda, which are the report of meetings attended by Board of Education members. I'm looking for lights and the approval appointment process. We voted all the way through it, but do we not take clear enough action? Like we didn't do a roll.
I think we probably need a motion and a second and a
We do.
formal vote for the minutes.
So we need a formal vote to approve the process that we laid out. So the formal vote for a panel interview, for the questions that we've designed, and the 2 minutes for each candidate, and then the process for scoring as we've talked about. So can I get a motion from someone?
I move approval.
A move approval by Trustee Marks and seconded by Trustee West. All those in favor? State aye. All right. So that motion approves for the process, and then this takes us to the reported meetings attended by Board of Education members. Anyone? Oh, Trustee Brown, sorry.
I just need to report that I had Dr. Noguchi accompany me as I was talking to some key local officials regarding the bond measure. That happened last Friday, a week ago Friday.
Great. Anyone else? All right, Trustee Marks.
I had a meeting with CSBA governance issues on how we're going to change how we govern CSBA, and it's been really interesting, and they've given us 79 pages of homework like 3 days before. So it was a lot of homework, but it was really interesting to see how just how governance is changing over in different nonprofits and other boards around the community, and how the larger the board, the longer it takes to make decisions and
get to know each other, and they end up in cliques. And so it was very interesting to me. But the ideal size, I just want to tell you this, the ideal size for a board was 7.
That's good.
That was pretty good. That's nationwide, so that was pretty good.
All right, anyone else? All right, items to be placed on future board of agenda. Trustee Walker.
I'll do this digitally, but I will let everybody know. What I'm going to ask is what I was talking about earlier tonight on a couple of different occasions. What is it we need to do as a board to authorize the district to bring in the OpenGov program and that tool and start loading up our data into it so that we can start utilizing it both as a board and as the community? I'll get it written up a little bit later, but we all saw that at the Facilities Need Workshop. They were there and did a demo. I don't know if everybody saw it, but when I keep talking about that's that tool. And I know that you guys have sort of been using it. I'd like to see whatever it is we need to do to make that go up, out, load it up, get it going so that we can see what's going on internally and then get it linked up to our website.
Great. Anyone else? All right, I'm looking for a motion to adjourn.
I'll move.
It's been moved by Trustee Walker and seconded by Trustee Marks. All in favor, state aye. Aye.